Chapter 3163. At the window, Xinyuan Mo's hugged Fengjiu and turned around to avoid the attack. However, just as they stood still, they saw a middle-aged man sitting in a wheelchair at the door, staring at them coldly. When the man's cold gaze swept past Xinyuan Mo's and landed on Fengjiu, Xinyuan Mo's frowned slightly, and a cold, murderous intent flashed across his deep black eyes. The middle-aged man's cold gaze was as if he had found his prey, and Fengjiu instantly attacked him. A strong airflow gathered into a palm wind that whistled out, and the fierce, murderous intent was aimed at the man's face. Whoosh! When the middle-aged man saw Xinyuan Mo's attacking, he narrowed his eyes without fear. He slapped the wheelchair with his hand, and the entire wheelchair flew out along with him. At the same time, he gathered spiritual power in his palm and attacked Xinyuan Mo's. However, the moment he attacked, a black airflow spread out from his palm. Seeing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed slightly. Just as he was about to step forward, he saw Xinyuan Mo's palm strike, and the black airflow that the man released was pushed back. Whoosh! Whoosh! Bang! The two forces collided, and the middle-aged man in the wheelchair flew out with the wheelchair. At the same time, he pulled the mechanism on the wheelchair, and several poisonous needles shot out from the wheelchair's handle, attacking Xinyuan Mo's. Xinyuan Mo's turned around and used his sleeve to block the poisonous needles. When he looked again, he saw that the middle-aged man had disappeared. He could not help but frown. The man's attack was fatal and ruthless. He was not weak, but when he knew that he was no match for him, he decisively chose to escape. This man was not simple. He turned around and walked towards Fengjiu. Seeing her thoughtful expression, he asked, "What are you thinking about?" "That person's dark aura." Fengjiu frowned. "It seems to be the aura of the Dark Lotus. However, this person's dark aura isn't strong." Even so, he guessed that this person must be related to the Black Lotus Master. Her eyes flickered when she recalled how she had destroyed the Black Lotus Lord's base. She knew that if they met again, it was only a matter of time before she fought with the Black Lotus Lord. At that time, it would depend on whose combat power was stronger. However, there had been no news of the Black Lotus Lord since then. Moreover, she had come here again, so she had completely forgotten about the Black Lotus Lord. She did not expect to see the aura of the Black Lotus here again. Xinyuan Mo's eyes flickered. Chi of the Black Lotus? Thinking of the time when Fengjiu was injured by the chi of the Black Lotus, his gaze deepened. He thought to himself, "It seems that I have to hurry up and improve my strength. Let's go in and take a look," Fengjiu said. When they entered the room and saw the woman on the bed, she raised her eyebrows and looked at Xinyuan Mo's. However, he had already turned around and left. He only said, "I'll wait for you outside." Come in," Fengjiu called out and walked to the side of the bed to take a look at the woman. "Ghost Doctor." He stepped forward and glanced at the woman with the same expression as before looking away. "Check this woman's identity and send her back secretly." Fengjiu fed the woman an elixir and walked out. Chapter 3164. Fengjiu responded. He had thought that it was a rapist, but he did not expect it to be a sadistic and gloomy man. Furthermore, this man had the aura of the Black Lotus, so he must be related to the Black Lotus Lord. The two of them returned first, leaving only behind to deal with the remaining matters. After returning to the residence, Xinyuan Mo's came out from his bath and saw Fengjiu sitting at the table, deep in thought. He asked, "What are you thinking about?" Fengjiu looked at him and said, "I'm thinking that neither the Black Lotus Lord nor the heavily injured Devil Lord have appeared again. This period of peace has allowed us to relax a little. I wonder what they are preparing for. I have a feeling that they won't give up just like that." Hearing this, he said slowly, "Don't worry too much. Just follow your usual routine. Du Fan and the others have been out and about recently. We can leave the matter of gathering information to them. Before the Black Lotus Lord and the others make a move, we can ignore everything else." I know," Fengjiu responded and stood up. "You should rest first. I'll go take a bath." Xinyuan Mo's nodded and walked into the inner room. Fengjiu walked towards the outer bathroom On the other side, Emo Chun, who was dressed in white, walked slowly on a small path in the dense forest. His white sleeves fluttered gently in the breeze. His footsteps were leisurely and gentle. The path was quiet and elegant. Occasionally, the chirping of birds and insects could be heard. Between the dense forest and trees, there was a faint mist that filled the air, adding a touch of tranquility and mystery to this place. After passing through the dense forest path and passing through the area covered by clouds, he stopped and raised his head slightly to look ahead. He saw an ancient and mysterious palace on the mountain peak. Clouds twined around it, and it was faintly discernible, as if it was a paradise on earth. Suddenly, a flock of red-crowned cranes flapped their wings and flew out from the top of the clouds. They flew through the clouds and into the blue sky. One of the red-crowned cranes let out a cry and swooped down from the sky towards him who was standing in the open space. When it got close to him, its speed suddenly decreased and it circled above his head. Then it flapped its wings and flew up into the sky, crying out, but it did not leave. "Which immortal is here?" A dignified and distant voice came from the clouds. It was like a bell in an ancient temple. The voice was sonorous and powerful, penetrating the clouds and reverberating in the sky. "Your teacher, Tian Jizi." Emo Chun stood against the wind, his white robes fluttering in the wind. His voice contained a powerful aura of spiritual energy. It was neither fast nor slow, neither arrogant nor humble. It reverberated in the sky and reached the clouds. "Welcome." When the word welcome came out, it was as if a golden light had spread out from the clouds. At this moment, from the seemingly empty palace on the peak of the clouds, there were actually 20 young men and women in fluttering white robes. They stepped on the wind and white clouds and walked towards Mo Chen's direction. However, they did not land on the ground. Instead, they stood in the sky. It was just that the 20 of them stood on two sides. At this moment, a red carpet flew out from the clouds and spread out until it reached Mo Chun. "Please." Chapter 3165. Seeing this, Mo Chun slowly walked towards the red carpet. His pace was leisurely, neither fast nor slow. As he walked on the red carpet, every step he took was as if he was walking on flat ground. His steps were steady and his posture was elegant. The 20 men and women looked at him, their eyes filled with curiosity. They looked at the man in white who looked like a banished immortal walking slowly. His steps were calm and elegant, and they couldn't help but guess in their hearts, "Who is this person?" Mo Chun walked along the red carpet towards the palace at the top of the clouds. As he walked forward, he gradually approached the palace. The 20 men and women behind him also slowly followed. He only stopped when he arrived in front of the majestic ancient palace. "Please." The ancient doors slowly opened. Inside, 2 rows of men and women in white stood. Their gazes all fell on Mo Chun. Mo Chun slowly walked in, step by step. When he arrived at the doors, a middle-aged man walked out with a smile and stood in front of Mo Chun. "A guest from afar, please come in." As he spoke, he gestured for Mo Chun to enter. Mo Chun nodded slightly and followed the middle-aged man inside. When he arrived at the ancient palace, he saw the immortal-like old man sitting on the main seat of the ancient palace. Mo Chun cupped his hands and bowed. Nailin Mo Chun greets the palace lord. In the main hall, there were people sitting on both sides. Some were old men, some were middle-aged men with goatees, and some were young men and women. Their gazes all fell on Mo Chun, silently sizing him up. "How is your master?" asked the white-bearded old man in the main seat with a benevolent expression. His kind gaze landed on Mo Chen's body, and he just quietly looked at her. "My master is doing well. He asked me to send his regards to the palace lord. He also brought a brocade pouch for you." As he spoke, he took out a brocade pouch and handed it to a disciple beside him. The disciple took it and handed it to the palace lord before retreating to the side. After receiving the brocade pouch, the palace lord did not open it. Instead, he looked meaningfully at Mo Chun, then said to the people in the hall, "From today onwards, Nalan Mo Chun, will be the holy son of the divine temple. Hearing this, the people below could not help but be stunned. Holy son? Their gazes fell on the man in white, and they were surprised. The position of the holy son of the divine temple had been empty for many years. The palace lord had never mentioned it, but today, Palace Lord, may I ask who this is? Just based on the name Nalan Machin, they had no idea who this person was. What ability did he have to be the holy son of the divine temple? Hearing an old man's question, the others' gazes also landed on the hallmaster. Before this, the temple lord had not mentioned the candidate for the holy son to them. Why would he suddenly let this person become the holy son of the temple? The divine temple was not an ordinary power. The position of holy son was extremely important. How could an ordinary person take up the position? Not to mention the people in the hall who were surprised. Even Mo Chun himself was stunned when he heard the palace lord's words. His master had only ordered him to deliver the brocade pouch, but did not say anything about making him the holy son. Why did the palace lord suddenly speak up? Chapter 31:66. He paused and smiled. His kind gaze fell on Mo Chun. Furthermore, to be able to become the disciple of my senior brother, Tian Jizi, how can you be an ordinary person? Hearing this, everyone's hearts trembled. Their gazes all fell on Mo Chun. One of them stepped forward and said, "If you are the holy son of the divine temple, how can you only have strength without saint energy? I wonder what makes you different from the others." Obviously, they would not easily admit that someone who came out of nowhere was the holy son. To become the holy lord of the divine temple, he must have strength that could convince them. Otherwise, even if he became the holy son, the people below him would not be convinced. Mo Chun smiled faintly when he heard their words. His warm and deep gaze swept past them before finally landing on the hallmaster. He said, "I don't want to become a chosen son. Hallmaster, please choose someone else. Now that I have delivered my master's brocade pouch, I should take my leave." As he spoke, he clasped his hands and bowed. Then, he turned to leave. At this moment, the temple lord on the main seat laughed and stopped him. "Wait." The temple lord looked at Mo Chun with a smile. When he stopped, he smiled and said, "You might not have understood what I meant." He smiled and stood up. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked down. He said, "The position of the holy son of the divine temple has been empty for many years. Your master, my senior brother, also left a look for you. On you, other than bearing the responsibility of the holy son, you are also the guardian of the star of the phoenix. You should have met the star of the phoenix long ago, right?" Hearing this, Mo Chun's eyes flashed. He turned to look at the temple lord, but did not speak. When the others heard this, their expressions changed. For a moment, they were silent. No one knew what they were thinking. The temple lord came before Mo Chun and looked at him. He slowly said, "You should have heard about the star of the phoenix long ago. As the guardian of the star of the phoenix, your responsibility is no small matter." He walked slowly through the hall and arrived at the entrance step by step, and then he placed his hand behind his back as he looked at the sky outside and sighed. The world is about to fall into chaos. The imperial monarch and phoenix star will encounter a great calamity. Once the calamity moves, the three dimensions will fall into chaos. The living beings will be plunged into misery and suffering, and all the living beings in the world will feel as if they've fallen into hell. He paused and turned to look at Mo Chun. "If you don't inherit the son of the saint and take on the responsibilities of the son of the saint, are you going to watch all of this happen?" Mo Chun pursed his lips and remained silent for a while. No one knew what he was thinking about. After a long while, he asked, "What else do I need to do to take over the position of saint?" "You need to enter the sacred tower to cultivate." The palace master looked at him and said, "In there, you need to sever your 7 emotions and 6 desires. You need to sever the threads of love and obtain the saint power." Upon hearing this, Mo Chun's gaze faintly flickered before he slowly withdrew his gaze. After a while, he said, "Since that is the case, I will trouble Hall Master to make the arrangements." The sanctum head took a deep look at Zhang Xian before nodding. He turned to the elder beside him and said, "Bring the inceptive sage to the sanctum of sages so that he can rest properly." "Yes," the elder replied. He bowed respectfully to Mo-chan and gestured for him to leave. "Inceptive sage, please follow me." "Thank you," Mo-chan said. He nodded at the temple lord before leaving with the elder. After Mo-chan left, someone could not help but ask, "Temple lord, why must he be the inceptive sage?" Chapter 31:67. Hearing those words, the crowd looked at one another, still unable to understand. The words heavens will contain too many meanings. Perhaps there was a reason behind it that they were unaware of in the sanctum of sages. The old man leading the way brought Mo-chan around the sanctum of sages as he explained, "My lord, although no one has lived in this place for many years, there are still people coming here to clean it every day. Furthermore, we have everything you need for daily use here." As he spoke, the old man brought him to a place and said, "Other than the main hall at the front, the back is where the Lord resides. The sanctum of sages is a sacred place. Without the Lord's permission, no one is allowed to step into the sanctum of sages. There is a hot spring in the middle of the hall where the Lord can bathe. Behind the hot spring is a cliff, and the Saint Tower is also behind the sanctum of sages. There is a formation barrier around the Saint Tower, and other than the sanctum head, no one has ever entered it." As the old man spoke, he brought Mo-chan around to familiarize himself with the surroundings. Finally, he bowed and said, "My lord, please take a rest first. The sanctum head will arrange for the servants to serve you later. When the time comes, I will bring them here to pay you a visit. And you may go." Mo-chan replied and allowed the old man to leave. Only then did the old man leave, leaving Mo-chan standing alone on the mountain peak. He looked at the clouds in front of him, looked at the boundless sky, and there seemed to be something churning in the depths of his eyes. No matter how the cold wind blew, he stood there motionlessly with his hands clasped behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking about 3 days later in the morning. On this day, everyone from the Sanctum of Sages was gathered in front of the main hall. They were an ancient lineage, and even though there weren't many people in the Sanctum of Sages, every single one of them was an influential figure in the outside world. Due to their pride, they were unwilling to easily acknowledge the sudden appearance of Nalen Mo-chan as the Lord of the Sanctum of Sages. One must know that the Lord of the Sanctum of Sages was equivalent to the Sanctum of Sages. Even the Sanctum head had to respectfully address him as the Lord of the Sanctum of Sages. It was precisely because his status was going to be extraordinary that no one was willing to easily admit to him. They all wanted to know what he was capable of. Looking at the man in white who was as handsome as an immortal, the people below exchanged glances. When the Lord of the Temple announced that from today onwards, Nalen Mo-chan would be the son of the temple, some people stood up. Hall Master, a middle-aged man, cupped his hands and bowed. Then he looked towards Nalen Mo-chan, who was dressed in white, and said in a deep and dignified voice, "I have 3 questions. Holy Son, please enlighten me." When the palace master saw this, he glanced at them and sighed softly. He said to Mo-chan, "If you want them to be convinced, it looks like you have to deal with it yourself." Mo-chan smiled and slowly took a step forward. Looking at the middle-aged man, he asked, "Which 3 questions are you referring to?" "The first question is about virtue. May I ask, what virtue does the Holy Son possess?" The middle-aged man asked in a deep voice. His voice was filled with spiritual energy and clearly entered everyone's ears. Hearing this, Mo-chan smiled warmly, giving up one's desires to obtain virtue. "As for me, I am following the will of the heavens. How can I not possess virtue?" Everyone was silent for a while. No one spoke. After a while, the middle-aged man asked again. "The second question is about the heart. May I ask, Holy Son, have you ever thought of sacrificing yourself for the world?" Chapter 31:68. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. They had thought that he would say that he had already cast aside his own life and death and was prepared to sacrifice himself for the world. Who would have thought that he would say that the world had nothing to do with him? There was only one person he wanted to protect. For a moment, everyone was shocked and dumbfounded. They could not believe it. Shouldn't the chosen saint have compassion for the world? How could he say that he did not care about the world and only wanted to protect one person? The hallmaster's eyes flashed when he heard this. He looked at the fairy-like man with one hand behind his back and the other in front of his abdomen. He sighed softly in his heart. If you are the chosen saint, shouldn't you have compassion for the world? Don't you think it's inappropriate for the chosen saint to say this? The middle-aged man continued to ask. His eyes were fixed on Mo-chan, who was dressed in white and seemed to be untainted by the world. Even he had to admit that Mo-chan's temperament was extremely outstanding. Immortal chi surrounded his body, and he was noble and extraordinary. He did not have a fierce and intimidating aura. He only had a gentle and refined aura. However, no one dared to underestimate him. Now that he was under great pressure to ask this question, he was also a little flustered. This person was the chosen saint that the Hall Master had personally appointed. He was a candidate chosen according to the will of the heavens. He was a disciple personally taught by the Hall Master's senior brother. He was the chosen saint that the Hall Master had found after many years of searching. What Mo-chan was doing now was challenging his authority. It would be a lie to say that he was not flustered. What does the world have to do with me? Who is the world to me? Mo-chan's deep and calm gaze also landed on the middle-aged man. He looked at him and slowly said, "If I am the chosen saint, I will not do it for the world, nor for the people of the world. I will only follow my heart and do as I please." Hearing this, the middle-aged man could not say a word. The others were the same. They could only stare at him in a daze. They did not expect him to be such a chosen saint. Seeing that everyone was silent and didn't say anything, only staring at him blankly, Mo-chan smiled and asked, "What's the last question?" When the middle-aged man heard this question, he suddenly came back to his senses. He calmed himself down and looked at Mo-chan's hesitant expression. After pausing for a moment, he carefully asked 3 questions of love. "May I ask the Holy Sun if love belongs to anyone? Can it really sever the 7 emotions and 6 desires? If one were to become a saint, one would need to sever all emotions and desires in order to cultivate to great success. Only by obtaining the saint power in the Holy Tower would one have the power to protect." However, he had previously said that the common people of the world had nothing to do with him and that he only wanted to protect one person in his life. He knew that the person he wanted to protect was undoubtedly the Phoenix Star. However, was this kind of protection due to emotions? A wisp of dim light flashed through Mo-chan's eyes when he heard this. He looked at the middle-aged man to the point the middle-aged man was unable to look him in the eye. The middle-aged man could only lower his head slightly and lower his eyes to conceal the uneasiness and panic in his eyes. Yes, everyone has emotions and desires. I'm no exception. It is because of this that I need to enter the pagoda to cultivate wholeheartedly, Mo-chan said slowly. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he asked, "Is there anyone else who has something to say? Today, I will allow you to ask questions. I forgive you for going against your superiors and repeatedly testing me. However, after today, if anyone shows the slightest disrespect, they will all be severely punished." Chapter 3169. The people below looked at him and thought to themselves. These 3 questions and 3 answers had made them unable to ask anything else. There were no more questions, but why hadn't they seen his strength yet? Since he had allowed them to test him today, they couldn't miss this opportunity. Thus, a few people looked at each other and whispered a few words. Finally, an old man stepped forward and bowed to Mo-chan. He said, "Holy Sun, if I may be so bold, I would like to ask the Holy Sun to teach me a few moves." Hearing this, Mo-chan looked at the old man with a gentle smile on his lips. He said slowly, "All right, come forward." Hearing this, the crowd could not help but feel their hearts in their mouths as they looked at the old man. This old man was the great elder of the Divine Temple and was a powerful cultivator who had reached the heavenly God realm. If he were to attack, with the white-robed holy sun on the stage, just as he was thinking this, he saw the head elder standing there motionlessly. His face was red, and his forehead was covered in sweat. It was as if he was under great pressure. His body was tense, but his legs didn't move a single step. The spirit force in his body surged, and the powerful pressure and aura made the surrounding people involuntarily retreat. What's wrong with the great elder? Didn't the holy sun ask him to come forward? Why is he just standing there and using his spiritual energy to suppress him? A young woman asked softly. A man beside her replied in a low voice, "Look carefully. It's not that the great elder is not moving. He can't move. He's being suppressed by the holy sun's pressure and can't take a step forward." How can that be? The great elder is a powerful cultivator at the heavenly God realm. Could it be that the holy sun is stronger than the great elder? The holy sun is the direct disciple of the temple master. How can he be weak? It's not surprising that he can suppress the great elder's strength. Otherwise, the temple master would not have just stood there and watched as if it had nothing to do with him. I didn't expect the holy sun to be so powerful. It looks like no one will object anymore, right? It's hard to say. A middle-aged man spoke, and then he gazed at the white-clothed holy sun on the arena and said, "There's still one more test to be completed in order to make everyone in the divine hall be convinced." Hearing this, someone at the side asked, "Which stage?" Naturally, it's the ability of a saint. As the middle-aged man spoke, he saw that the first elder in front of him could no longer support himself and fall to the ground. His back was covered in sweat, and his face was pale as he looked at the stage. "I've lost, and I accept my loss wholeheartedly," said the great elder. After calming down for a moment, he stood up and bowed respectfully. His face went from red to pale, and no one could understand the pressure he had to endure. It was precisely because of this that he knew that the saint's strength was indeed above his own, and he had no choice but to accept it. Imogen nodded slightly, looked at the crowd, and asked, "Who else?" Looking at the white-clothed holy sun on the arena, his expression was the same as before. His face was gentle and his temperament was refined, but he seemed to have everything under control. This caused those who were thinking of how to speak up to hesitate for a moment. He was powerful and confident. Today's test had exceeded their expectations time and time again, causing those who wanted to step forward to test him to hesitate. This was because the white-clothed holy sun on the arena made them feel uncertain. Chapter 3170. May I ask if you are proficient in the 5 elements and 8 trigrams, or the North Star numbers? He did not mention that he wanted to test Imo-chan's ability in this area. Instead, he asked if Imo-chan knew anything about these things. "I know a little," Imo-chan said as his gaze fell on the person. Hearing this, the person paused for a moment before saying, "Your teacher is the temple master's senior brother. I think you must have learned a lot from him. It seems that we have overstepped our boundaries." He did not ask to test Imo-chan's ability in this area again. Since Imo-chan had already said that he knew a little, that was enough. The temple master would deal with the rest. There was no need for them to say anything more. The saint coronation ceremony ended with everyone bowing in respect. From this day onwards, the divine temple finally had a saint that everyone in the divine temple respected. As night fell, Imo-chan, who had returned to the Sanctum of Sages, made a detour around the main hall and walked over to the hot spring. He took off his clothes and stepped into the warm water. His body submerged slightly in the water, leaving only half of his body exposed. Leaning against the side, he looked at the twinkling stars in the pitch-black night sky. He couldn't help but slowly close his eyes, allowing his body to relax in the hot spring water. Scenes of memories flashed through his mind a few days later in Sifong City. "Lung Hua, have they sent back any news?" Feng Jiu asked Lung Hua, Du Fan, and the others. "Still no news," Lung Hua said. He thought for a moment and said, "Master, should I go and take a look?" Feng Jiu waved his hand. "No, I will go. You stay in a residence and take care of things." Since Du Fan and the others went on a mission, They had not returned, and there was no news. She thought that something must have happened. Otherwise, they would have sent back a message. But the Yama Lord is in closed-door training. If Master leaves, there will only be a few of us left in the residence. I am worried. Lung Hua was a little worried. After all, the Yama Lord was in seclusion, and the little master was in the mansion. If the little master left, only a few of them would be left to guard the mansion. If something happened, then, don't worry, I'll leave the Fire Phoenix behind to guard the residence. Elder May is also here, so you guys will be fine. She said slowly, make the arrangements. I'll leave tonight. Seeing this, Lung Hua could only reply, yes. Then he began to make arrangements. Elder May was surprised when he found out that she was going to leave. Miss, you just came back not long ago, and you're going out again. They haven't returned yet, so I have to go and take a look no matter what. Fengjiu said, looking at him, I'll leave the manor to you. Don't let anything happen. Don't worry, Mississippi. As long as Elder May is still alive, I will guard this place well and not let anything happen to them. He smiled and said, since Miss wants to go and take a look, then don't worry and go. Those people did not know that the little master was hiding here, and now that he was here, it would be even harder for those people to find the little master. For now, everything was still safe. Fengjiu nodded. She left instructions to Lung Hua, Lung Shuang, Elder May, Hui Lang, and the others. She also instructed the Fire Phoenix to guard this place well. When evening came and the sky was getting dark, she quietly left the residence. Chapter 3171. However, it had already been so many days, yet they had not returned. Furthermore, there was no news. She was worried that they might have encountered some unforeseen circumstances on their way back. Taking advantage of the night, she left the city in the middle of the night and flew on her sword. When she was getting further and further away from Four Corner City, she felt that the communication jade tablet in her space had some movement. Taking it out, she saw that it was a message from Du Fan asking for help. Immediately, her gaze darkened. Following the direction indicated on the jade tablet, she sped up, hoping to reach them as soon as possible. No matter how serious the situation was, Du Fan and the others would not send out a distress signal. This was because they felt that if her subordinates did not even have the ability to protect themselves, and even had to ask their master for help, then what was the use of having them? Therefore, even though she had always told them to ask for her help if they encountered any danger, they had never obeyed her orders. However, this time, they had sent out a distress signal. It was obvious how dangerous their current situation was. When she saw this message, two reactions appeared in her mind. One was that they were in danger and their lives were hanging by a thread. The second was that they had fallen into the hands of the enemy. Even their distress signal had fallen into the hands of the enemy to lure her over. Regardless of which one it was, she had to go and take a look, even if it was just a trap. In a dense forest, the unconscious Du Fan and the others were trapped in a barrier and unable to come out. Their bodies were stained with blood, and some of their wounds were still bleeding. One by one, they lay motionless within the barrier. If it were not for their rising and falling chests, one would have thought that they were already dead. Outside the barrier, a black-clothed man came in front of a black-clothed middle-aged man and reported respectfully that Fengjiu has already left the city. The people who have arranged for an ambush have already been prepared. The black-clothed man replied. With his hands behind his back, he glanced at the people in the barrier and said, these people are trapped here. Don't touch them. I have set up a trap in the surroundings. We'll wait for that Fengjiu to come and die. Yes, the black-clothed man replied and stood respectfully to the side. Let's go. There's no need for anyone to stay here anymore. Follow me back to report. I heard that Fengjiu is very powerful. Can we really kill her like this? The man in black asked doubtfully. Kill her? Hee. Fengjiu was the reincarnation of the Phoenix Star. How could it be easy to kill her? This time, the higher-ups didn't order us to kill her. We just need to let her have a taste of our power. As the middle-aged man spoke, he narrowed his eyes and led the black-clothed man into the forest. His figure flashed a few times and disappeared into the depths of the forest. In the night, Fengjiu, who was flying on her sword, suddenly felt a cold, murderous aura coming from behind her. She instinctively dodged and saw a cold light flash by. The cold, murderous aura spread across the sky. "Who is it?" she shouted coldly. Her sharp eyes scanned the surroundings with an intimidating aura and finally locked onto a certain spot in the darkness. Within the darkness, a dozen or so black-clothed people faintly appeared. Evil spirit aura surged from their bodies as they silently appeared behind her without a single ripple. "The one who will send you on your way." Chapter 31:72. On their bodies, as their auras surged, a dark aura also spread out, turning into ropes that could be seen with the naked eye and wrapped around her limbs. Fengjiu looked at the black aura that wrapped around her limbs and could not help but narrow her eyes. She immediately activated the spiritual aura in her body and mobilized the natal true fire in her body. "Destroy!" As her voice rang out, flames ignited on her body. The scarlet flames rose with a whoosh, incinerating the black chi that had wrapped around her hands and feet. With a flip of her hand, the azure-edged sword that glowed with a green light appeared in her hand. A sharp sword aura shot out, killing the two black-clothed men in front of her with a single strike. "Hiss!" A shrill cry resounded as the two black-clothed figures were slashed into two at the waist. However, their bodies transformed into strands of black smoke that vanished into the heavens and the earth in the next moment. Fengjiu frowned slightly when she witnessed this scene, and she glanced at those people who'd charged over without the slightest hesitation. She knew that these people were death warriors, so she immediately attacked even more fiercely. Her figure flashed across the night sky like a swimming dragon. The sharp green sword in her hand flew out like a flower. Using the strength of a heavenly god and the crushing pressure of a powerful pressure, it did not take long for all the black-clothed men to be killed. She narrowed her eyes as she watched the men in black disappear without leaving behind any corpses. She glanced at the hand holding the green-edged sword. There was a wisp of black aura in the palm of her hand, a tiny speck that had yet to disappear from her flesh. She took out an elixir from the space and consumed it. Gathering her thoughts, she continued to move forward. While flying through the night sky, she kept an eye on the movements below. She only stopped when she saw the few people who had fallen on the ground in the dense forest. Her figure swept down from the sky. When she arrived below, she saw that there was a boundary that trapped them. Immediately, her hands formed a seal in front of her, and spiritual energy surged forward. "Break!" As he shouted, his spirit force surged forward. The flames followed the flow of the boundary and burned upward. In the next moment, there was a bang. The boundary was broken and spirit force rushed out. At this moment, countless arrows shot out from the surroundings. Fengjiu, who was about to move forward, waved her sleeve and blocked all the arrows. After a while, the surroundings seemed to quiet down, and there were no other movements in the dark forest. She glanced at her surroundings and quietly sized them up. After confirming that there were no more ambushes, she walked forward. Du Fan, Fan Lin, Lu Oyu. She called out their names, but saw that they were all unconscious. If not for the fact that they still had a trace of life, it would be as if they were dead. Immediately, she took out medicine from a space and prepared to feed them. However, at this moment, a strange blood-red formation appeared around them. This blood-red formation merged with the blood flowing out from their bodies and formed a large formation that emitted a strange blood-red light. The blood-red light soared into the sky, and a powerful spiritual energy spread out. In the night, Fengjiu suddenly stood up in shock. In the next moment, she saw the blood-red light in the formation turn into a sharp and cold sword aura. She immediately waved her sleeve and put the few people on the ground into the space. Hong Long. Bang! Chapter 31:73. The blood-red light shot out a dazzling light in the pitch-black sky. A loud rumble resounded in the night like a thunderclap, causing the ground to shake violently. This commotion alarmed the experts in the surrounding towns. While they were shocked, they quickly sent people to find out what was going on. At the same time, in Four Corners City, Elder May, who was guarding the Feng Manor, felt his heart tremble. He looked at the blood-red light soaring into the sky and had a bad feeling in his heart. This movement, could it have something to do with Fengjiu? Lung Hua, Lung Shuang, Hui Lang, and Ing Yi quickly arrived at Elder May's side. Seeing him jump to a high place, they also jumped to his side. Elder May, could this movement have something to do with Master? Lung Hua asked, feeling a bit worried. Master had just left, and something like this had happened in that place. He was afraid. Elder May glanced at them and coughed lightly. You don't need to worry. The young miss is blessed by the heavens. Nothing will happen to her. That blood-red light soaring into the sky shouldn't have anything to do with the young miss. Hearing this, the few of them did not feel relieved. It was because this matter had happened too coincidentally. She had just left a moment ago, and the next moment, something like this had happened in that direction. How could they convince themselves that this matter had nothing to do with her? The fire phoenix should be able to sense it, Lung Shuang suddenly said, then turned around and headed towards the back of the mountain. The fire phoenix was guarding the cave in the back of the mountain where the Yama Lord was cultivating in seclusion. Now that something like this had happened, it should be able to sense it, as it had a life contract with its master. Hearing this, the others immediately turned around and followed Lung Shuang to the back of the mountain. At this moment, the Yama Lord, who was cultivating in seclusion in the back of the mountain, swallowed the pill and completely absorbed its energy. Just as he was about to take this opportunity to break through to the heavenly god realm, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He quickly stabilized his surging aura, got up and walked out of the cave. Walking out of the cave, he saw the red light that shot up into the sky. Seeing the fire phoenix anxiously walking in front, he immediately asked, "She left?" Yama Lord. Seeing him come out, the fire phoenix hurriedly flapped its wings to greet him. Du Fan and the others have been out on a mission, and we haven't heard from them. Master wanted to go out and take a look, but something happened. I suddenly can't feel Master's breath. I don't know what happened. It had a life contract with its master, so its senses were stronger than others. Now that it couldn't sense its master's aura, it couldn't help but worry. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose frowned slightly and said, "You stay in the mansion, I will go and take a look." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure rose from the ground like an eagle spreading its wings. In an instant, he flew thousands of miles away and disappeared into the night. When Lung Hua and the others arrived, they only saw the fire phoenix standing guard. Before they could ask, the fire phoenix had already spoken. "Yes, master. The Yama Lord has already rushed over to take a look." Hearing this, the others didn't say anything else and just went forward to wait. No matter how anxious they were, there was nothing they could do to help. It was better to guard the mansion and prevent their master from worrying. Chapter 3174. Looking at the place in front of him, dark clouds swirled in his eyes. His face was as dark as water. He looked around and noticed the traces of the blood array on the ground. His heart trembled slightly, and he turned to leave. Not long after he left, many people came to the place. They stared at the huge pit and clicked their tongues in wonder. They studied it for a long time, but they still couldn't figure out what had happened back in Feng Manor. Lung Hua and the others quickly gathered around him. "Yama Lord, have you seen our master?" Lung Hua asked. Lung Hua, Hui Lang, and Ing Yi were also there. Even Qin Xian, who had taken care of Hao in the courtyard, came to the front yard with the child. I didn't see anyone, but there are traces of the blood array on the ground. There are also remnants of a black aura in the surroundings. It seems to be the demon's people. As Xinyuan Mo spoke, he had a pensive look on his face. In his heart, he was guessing where the blood array would take her to. Will Master be okay? Qin Xian couldn't help but ask. Yes, Master. Will the ghost doctor be okay? No. With the ghost doctor's strength and ability, how could anything happen to her? She will definitely be safe and sound. Grey Wolf hurriedly said. Xinyuan Mose sat on the main seat. He glanced at them and ordered in a deep voice, "I'm going to cultivate in seclusion and try to break through to the divine realm as soon as possible. Now that Fengjiu hasn't returned, you can take care of everything in the manor." "Yes," everyone replied and stood up straight. Hui Lang, Ing Yi. Xinyuan Moses' gaze fell on the two of them. "Master." The two of them stepped forward and looked at him. "You two go and find out about the demons and the Black Lotus Master. I want to know everything after I come out of seclusion." Hearing this, the two of them immediately replied, "Yes. Don't worry, Master." Xinyuan Mo stood up and said to Lung Shuang and the others, "Take good care of her." Then he went to the back of the mountain. Inside the Feng Manor, Elder Mei, Lung Hua, and the others were guarding it. Fire Phoenix continued to guard the cave in the back mountain. As for Xinyuan Mo's, he had entered seclusion. Because he was worried about Fengjiu, he needed to break through in the shortest amount of time possible. On the other side, early morning, Fengjiu, whose robe had been cut by the wind blade, treated and bandaged the wounds of Du Fan and the others who were lying on the ground. Then he leaned against the side and rested, his eyes paying attention to the movements around him. At that time, when the blood array was activated, she was only able to save the few of them in time. But because of that, she was sent to this unknown valley. Fortunately, although Du Fan and the others were heavily injured, they managed to preserve their lives. As time passed, Guillermo woke up first. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw his master sitting by the side, leaning against a tree. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Master, why are you here?" Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "If I wasn't here, you guys would probably have gone to see the King of Hell." At this time, Guillermo finally regained his senses. After seeing the wounds on his body, his expression changed. "We were ambushed. We don't know what happened after that." Fengjiu threw a water bag filled with spirit spring water to him and said, "Drink some. You guys are all heavily injured. When they wake up, I will tell you all the details." Guillermo caught the water bag that Fengjiu threw over and opened it to drink a mouthful, quenching his thirst. He went forward and shook the others, waking them up one by one. When Du Fan and the others were shaken awake by Guillermo, the moment they opened their eyes, they saw Fengjiu in front of them. They were all shocked. Chapter 3175. Seeing that they had awakened one by one, Fengjiu briefly explained the situation to them. Finally, she said, "So, this is what you see now? As for where this place is, it seems to be a valley." As she spoke, she took out a few fruits from her space and threw them to them. "Fill your stomachs." The few of them took the fruits and ate them. As the spiritual fruits entered their stomachs, a warm current surged into their bodies and soothed their internal injuries. They looked at their bandaged wounds and asked, "Master, should we go and find a way out first? You are all injured. Since you're awake, you should rest here first. I'll come back after I explore the path." As she spoke, she summoned Tun Yin from her space and had it guard them here. She left first to explore the surroundings and get a feel of the terrain. She flew forward on her sword. After flying for a while, she stood on a high place and saw the scene that came into her eyes. She could not help but be slightly surprised. She saw that after crossing a mountain, there were various kinds of spiritual herbs planted on the small hillside that connected to the valley. There were even medicine boys busily working in the medicinal fields. If the place they were at before was a valley, it could only be considered a hole compared to the medicinal valley in front of them. Just as she was about to go forward, she lightly touched the boundary that protected the entire valley. Almost at that moment, a sharp shout was heard. "Who goes there?" As soon as the shout was heard, two figures instantly appeared in mid-air within the boundary, less than 10 meters away from her. She sized up the two people and could not help but be shocked. Even with her cultivation as an enlightened master, she could not tell the strength of these two people. Then, she looked at their auras. They were calm and reserved, and their eyes were like torches. They were clearly extraordinary. "Where did you come from? How dare you trespass into Dan Wang Valley?" One of the middle-aged men shouted sharply. Even though they were separated by the boundary, she could feel the coercion shooting out from inside and attacking her. If she did not have the coercion of the ancient divine beast in her body, she was afraid that she would not be able to withstand the powerful coercion of the other party. My name is Fengjiu. I didn't mean to intrude. I just lost my way here and accidentally stumbled into this place. I didn't want to alarm the two of you, so please forgive me. She cupped her hands and spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. Perhaps it was because her attitude was better, but the two men's dark faces eased a little. They sized up the beautiful woman in red in front of them, and their eyes flashed. They slowly asked, "Our Danwang Valley is isolated from the rest of the world, and the surrounding thousands of miles are all dangerous places. How did a woman like you come here?" "It's a long story, but I did come here by accident." As she spoke, she looked at the two of them with her clear eyes and said, "I don't intend to enter Danwang Valley either. I just want to ask how to get out of this area." Hearing this, one of the middle-aged men shouted coldly, "Do you think our Danwang Valley is a place where you can come and go as you please?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Do you mean that you want me to stay here?" Chapter 3176. Isn't it because the surrounding 10,000 li is filled with danger? Is that why no one has come here? Is that why they don't know about the existence of the Pill King Valley? The corners of her mouth curled into a smile as she looked at the two men without fear or panic. That's only one of the reasons. The middle-aged man chuckled as he stroked his beard and looked at Fengjiu. Then what's the second reason? Fengjiu asked respectfully. The second reason is that there are people like you who accidentally came here and have already become fertilizer or have become a member of our Danwang Valley. Becoming a member of our Danwang Valley means that you have to forget your past memories and only serve Danwang Valley. Staying here, you will never be able to leave again. Hearing that, Fengjiu nodded. She looked at the busy medicine boys in the valley. She saw that most of them were young, but there were also a few who were older. They did not pay much attention to what was happening here, as if they were already used to it. They only focused on doing their own things. Just as she was pondering, one of the two people inside the barrier suddenly rushed out and reached out to grab her. Her clear eyes flashed, and she quickly retreated to avoid the two people's hands. At the same time, she asked with a smile, "What do you want to do? Your appearance and bearing are both outstanding and can be called peerless. It's a pity to become fertilizer. Why don't we capture you and feed you the water of oblivion and leave you in Danwang Valley?" As the middle-aged man spoke, his eyes flashed as he stared at Fengjiu. "Danwang recently said that he's lacking someone to serve him. If we send you to him, he will definitely be rewarded greatly." Hearing that, Fengjiu's smile deepened, but her clear eyes were cold and a cold light faintly flashed. She looked at the two people rushing over and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, why don't you two take me to see Danwang before making a decision? You should know that a beauty without a true temperament is lacking in wildness. Danwang might not like her. Besides, the two of you are powerful. I'm just a little girl. I can't escape from the palms of the two of you, right? At least you know your place." The two people stared at her for a while before saying, "Fine. Since you know what's good for you, we'll let you go on your own." As they spoke, they waved their sleeves and opened a hole in the barrier behind them. "Please." The two people looked at Fengjiu and gestured for her to go on her own. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled faintly. Her figure flashed as she headed inside. Seeing this scene, the two of them looked at each other, then walked inside. After entering, the barrier behind them also sealed up. Fengjiu, who had descended from the sky, walked slowly on the small mountain path paved with stones. The two people followed behind her, as if to prevent her from escaping. However, when they saw that she was not frightened at all, as if she was taking a stroll in her own backyard, the two people could not help but feel strange. They had been here for so many years, but they had never seen anyone so calm. Compared to the people before, they could not help but feel that this woman was really a weirdo. "You accompany her. I'll go report," one of the middle-aged men said. His figure flashed, and he rushed forward. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared at the end of the mountain path. Fengjiu looked around and asked, "How many people are there in Danwang Valley?" Chapter 3177. His voice paused, then he continued, "There are 99 cultivators guarding Danwang Valley." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed slightly. She looked at him and asked, "The level of your alchemists here shouldn't be low, right? For Danwang to be called Danwang, could it be that he has already reached the highest level of alchemists, the pill deity?" "Hee, I didn't expect you to have some knowledge." "That's right, Danwang is already an alchemist at the pill deity level. The pills he refines are unparalleled in the world. Just one pill can increase our strength, and just one pill can give people an endless lifespan. To be able to follow Danwang is our fortune. If you can enter Danwang's eyes and become his woman, Danwang will naturally not treat you unfairly." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and only said, "I haven't seen an alchemist at the pill deity level. I really have to take this opportunity to see it." Thus, along the way, she chatted with the middle-aged man. Perhaps the middle-aged man felt that she couldn't leave this place, so he didn't hold back from her. Instead, he told her everything she asked, and she learned a lot about this place. When she passed by a cave, she smelled a strong medicinal fragrance. She couldn't help but stop and look at the cave, asking, "Is there an alchemist for refining pills?" "That's right. Every alchemist in our Danwang Valley is the best." His expression was proud and proud. "Most of the pills they refine are for us to consume to increase our strength. In here, the alchemist status is extraordinary." Fengjiu nodded and asked again, "Which alchemist refined the oblivion water? Can you really forget everything in the world after drinking it?" "The oblivion water was refined by Danwang, and only Danwang can refine it." "Looks like Danwang is really good," Fengjiu said. "Of course, he's Danwang." As the middle-aged man spoke, he sized up Fengjiu and asked, "You know about medicinal pills?" Fengjiu shook his head and said seriously, "I don't understand." "It looks like you don't understand either. The Tao of alchemy is broad and profound. How could a little girl like you understand it?" The middle-aged man glanced at Fengjiu with an I-knew-it look on his face. He led her all the way to the front and said, "We're about to reach Danwang's cave. Let's wait here first." As he spoke, he brought Fengjiu to a stone table under a tree at the side of the mountain path and sat down. Fengjiu obeyed and sat down. He looked around and said, "Are all the people living here immortals' caves? One cave residence per person?" "And that's right, one cave residence per person. It's also convenient to refine pills and make medicine." The middle-aged man nodded and said, perhaps because he saw that Fengjiu had been well-behaved along the way, he called for someone to bring tea over. "Have a cup of tea. This is the spirit tea that our Danwang Valley grew ourselves. You can't buy it even if you have money." He gestured for her to try the tea. Fengjiu smiled slightly and thought it was funny. Did this person think that she had to stay? Did he think that she would never be able to escape once she entered this place? Then should we hand over all the pills refined by the alchemists in the valley? Chapter 3178. So that's how it is. As Fengjiu spoke, she looked to the front and saw the middle-aged man who had left earlier walk over. She picked up the teacup and took a sip. Sure enough, the tea was fragrant and sweet as it entered her throat. There was even a faint aura of spiritual power condensing in her body. "How is it? Does Danwang want to see her?" The middle-aged man sitting next to Fengjiu asked as he looked at the person who had come. The middle-aged man glanced at Fengjiu and said to the person, "Danwang just happens to be in seclusion to refine pills. He can't be disturbed." "Didn't I hear that Danwang had just refined a new pill not long ago? Why is he in seclusion to refine pills again?" The middle-aged man was astonished. He didn't expect to run into Danwang in seclusion. He said that he went into seclusion early this morning. It will probably take at least a few days before he comes out. Let's settle her down first. The middle-aged man said as he stared at Fengjiu. She must drink the oblivion water first. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed slightly. She asked, "What does the oblivion water look like? Will there be any adverse effects on the body after drinking it? Is it only after I drink the oblivion water that you can completely relax?" "That's right. Only when you drink the oblivion water and forget everything in the past, like a blank piece of paper, can we treat you as one of us." The middle-aged man said as he stared at her, "You don't have to worry. It will only make your memories disappear. It won't have any other effects on you." As he spoke, the middle-aged man took out a small transparent bottle and handed it to Fengjiu. "Drink it." Fengjiu took it and looked at the medicine inside the transparent bottle. It was a sky-blue medicine, and there seemed to be light flowing through it. She held the small bottle and looked at the two middle-aged men. She smiled and said, "Then after I drink this medicine, will I forget the two of you as well?" "That's right." The two men nodded. Hearing this, Fengjiu flicked her sleeve, and a wine pot and 3 wine cups appeared on the table. She held the wine pot and poured the 3 cups. Fengjiu, and the two of you know each other. Since you want to forget the past, I invite the two of you to have a drink with me." As she spoke, she raised the wine cup and looked at the two men. "Hee. You didn't put drugs in the wine, did you?" one of the middle-aged men said as he stood still. Fengjiu laughed. "Fengjiu, if that's the case, wouldn't I? With the strength and cultivation of the two of you, not all kinds of medicine will be useful to you." When the two heard this, they looked at each other and nodded. "You're right. With our cultivation, ordinary medicines are useless to us. What's more, we're in Pill King's Valley. We don't think you dare to play any tricks." As they spoke, the two men sat down and took a sniff of the wine cup. The strong fragrance of the wine assailed their noses, and there was a strong and pure aura of spiritual power. The two men couldn't help but take a deep breath. "I know this is good wine even before I drink it." The two men praised and slowly tasted the wine. After drinking the wine, they felt that the wine was more fragrant and delicious, so they poured another cup at the same time. Fengjiu smiled when she saw this. She also picked up her glass and took a sip of wine. She watched the two of them drink 3 glasses of wine in a row. When she was about to pour another glass, her outstretched hand drooped down weakly. Her whole body also fell down, and she fell asleep. It seemed that she was very drunk. Chapter 3179. Just as she was about to stand up, a voice suddenly sounded. "Is the immortal drunken wine tasty?" She was startled and instinctively raised her head to look in the direction of the voice. She actually saw a gray-robed old man sitting on a tree. The old man's body was dirty and messy, as if he had not bathed for a long time. His hair and beard were already shining with a silver light, but his face was rosy and there was not a single wrinkle. At this moment, he was looking at her with a smiling gaze, which made her somewhat confused for a moment. When did this old man get here? She actually did not notice. He even asked if the immortal drunken wine tasted good. Did he see everything that happened just now? For a moment, her eyes flashed as she calculated in her heart. Seeing that she did not speak, the old man jumped down from the tree and sat by the table. He pointed at the wine in front of Fengjiu. "Give this old man a cup too." Fengjiu looked at him and said, "This is something that will make you drunk. Are you sure you want to drink it?" "I'll try it," the old man said with a smile. "I haven't drunk in a long time. I'm a little craving." Seeing this, Fengjiu poured a cup for him. After seeing him raise the cup and take a sip, he frowned with a look of disdain. "This is as light as water. Can it be considered the immortal drunken wine? It doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste good." As he spoke, he poured the wine behind him and put the cup on the table. He looked at Fengjiu with a smile. "How about I take you to drink the real immortal drunken wine?" Before Fengjiu could say anything, she was pulled away by the old man, not allowing her to resist or refuse. Looking at the old man, Fengjiu's eyes narrowed. Who exactly was this person? Up close, this person had a strong medicinal fragrance on him. He should be someone who dealt with medicinal pills all year round. But when she was on the tree, she did not smell any medicinal fragrance at all. "Senior, are you an alchemist?" Fengjiu asked as she followed him. The old man in front looked back at her and said with a smile, "Yes, this old man is an alchemist." As they walked, they passed through the small forest and the cave. When they arrived at a stream, the old man let go of Fengjiu's hand and stared at the stream in front of him. Finally, He said to Fengjiu, "Wait for me here." His figure flashed past, and his feet stepped on the rocks as he leaped out. He came to the side of a big tree at the bottom of the stream and began to dig. Not long after, he dug out a jar of wine from the soil in the stream. Ha, it's still here. He smiled so excitedly that his eyes narrowed. He walked quickly to Fengjiu's side and said, "Let's go. This old man will let you have a taste of the true drunken immortal." As he spoke, he carried the jar of wine to the other side of the forest. He sat down under a tree and was about to open the jar to drink when Fengjiu said, "Wait." The old man looked at her and asked, "What's wrong? Isn't it a pity to have wine without food? When I came here earlier, I saw a group of spirit chickens in the forest. How about I catch two and roast them?" She looked at the old man with sparkling eyes. "Spirit chickens?" The old man was stunned for a moment, and his expression was strange. "You mean the phoenix tail spirit chicken?" "Yes." Fengjiu nodded and said, "I'm good at roasting chicken. It'll definitely taste great with wine." Hearing this, the old man's eyes lit up. "All right, then you go. I'll wait for you here," the old man said, looking at her. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded and turned to leave. Chapter 3180. Fengjiu walked back to where she came from. Because of the old man's unfathomable strength, she wanted to take this opportunity to leave. However, thinking of the old man's expression and casual tone, she became uncertain. Although he did not know who this person was, but one thing was for sure, and that was this old man was the alchemist inside. However, this alchemist clearly saw everything, but did not mention anything, did not say anything, and instead pulled her to drink. This made her a little confused. What did he want to do? After catching two phoenix-tailed spiritual chickens, she went back. It was not that she didn't want to leave, but she felt that the old man wouldn't let her go so easily. Maybe when she slipped away, the old man would follow her. With his unfathomable strength, even if he followed her, she wouldn't be able to find him. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but sigh. The cultivators she had seen outside for a long time were not much stronger than her. But she didn't expect that when she came here, she would meet several people who were stronger than her. After returning with two phoenix-tailed spiritual chickens, she saw the old man sitting under a tree with a wine jar in his arms, resting with his eyes narrowed. She went forward and called, "Senior, I caught the phoenix-tailed spiritual chicken." The old man opened his eyes and looked at Fengjiu, smiling. "Then you deal with it." Seeing this, Fengjiu collected the blood of the phoenix-tailed spiritual chicken and the longest tail of the two spiritual chickens. Instead of using branches to make a fire, she directly cleaned the chicken's feathers and internal organs, wrapped them in mud, and made a beggar's chicken. She directly baked it with the flame in her hand. The old man sat beside her and watched, his eyes flashing. She didn't know what he was thinking. As time passed, she dug out the two beggar's chickens and cracked them open. When the rich fragrance filled the air, the old man's eyes lit up. "It smells so good. Senior, try it." Fengjiu handed him one of the chickens. The old man didn't refuse. He took out a pair of chopsticks from his sleeve and ate the chicken. Then he praised, "You're really good." As he spoke, he poured a glass of wine and drank it. Then he poured another glass for Fengjiu. "Come, try this drunken immortal." Hearing this, Fengjiu paused for a moment. "If this is the drunken immortal, I'm afraid I'll be drunk with just one cup. How can I drink with Senior?" "Hee, that's true," the old man said with a smile. With a flip of his hand, he took out a pill. "Come, eat this pill. I guarantee that you won't get drunk." When he saw the pill, Fengjiu's heart skipped a beat. It was actually a Tier 7 pill. This old man actually took out a Tier 7 medicinal pill right off the bat. Truly remarkable. Suppressing the shock in her heart, she took the pill and looked at it, saying, "Senior, 7th level pill is extremely precious." "You're giving it to me just like that? Precious? Ha ha! No matter how precious a pill is, it still has to be consumed by someone to have room to display its effects. Otherwise, no matter how precious it is, it would be useless," the old man said with a smile, drinking the immortal drunken wine and eating the beggar's chicken. His ruddy face was full of satisfaction. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed slightly, and his heart was slightly shaken. No matter how precious a pill was, it still had to be consumed by someone to display its magical effects. No matter how precious a pill was, it still had to be consumed by someone to be considered a precious pill. Very few people had such a state of mind and attitude. Chapter 3181. It really is the drunken immortal. She looked at the old man with surprise and asked, "Senior, this place is cut off from the rest of the world. How could there be the drunken immortal?" Also, the old man in front of her was drinking cup after cup, yet he didn't seem drunk at all. Could it be that he also ate the drunken pill in advance? The old man narrowed his eyes as he tasted the wine. He leaned against the tree and looked at her with a relaxed expression as he said, "This drunken immortal was brewed by this old man. It's just that I haven't drunk wine in a long time and haven't brewed anymore. I hid the last jar here before and only dug it out today to drink it." Then the drunken immortal outside. Naturally, there are people who imitate it, but it's only 30% similar. Only you guys think it's the drunken immortal. The old man lightly snorted as he drank the wine in his cup. Seeing Fengjiu staring at him, he began to laugh. "Little girl, could it be that you're interested in it?" Fengjiu looked at him and said, "My grandfather likes to drink wine, and I also know how to brew some. However, I can't brew the drunken immortal." "That's easy. Take me as your master, and I'll teach you." His eyes lit up as he looked at her with a face full of expectation. "Just now, I saw the way you roasted the chicken. That flame was not an ordinary flame. Since you have a heavenly flame, it's best if you become an alchemist. You have to know that the pills refined by a heavenly flame alchemist are not something the normal alchemist can compare to." Fengjiu shook her head. "No, this place is too strange." The old man was stunned. "Strange? How could it be? This place isn't a place filled with demons." The two people from before said that if the people who came here didn't drink the forgotten dust water, they would be used as fertilizer. When I came here, the two people said that they would send me to serve your Dan Wang. I roughly calculated that your Dan Wang is at least 1,000 years old, yet you're still thinking about a flower like me. Pooh! Cough, cough. The old man had just drunk a mouthful of wine when he heard her words. He fiercely coughed a few times and patted his chest to catch his breath. He stared at her and said, "Little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Is Dan Wang that kind of person?" "What else?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. "He's definitely not the kind of person you're talking about. Those two must have misunderstood Dan Wang's intentions. Dan Wang is only focused on alchemy. How could he be interested in women? That's ridiculous." His face was dark, and he seemed to be a little angry. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. "You're not Dan Wang. How do you know that Dan Wang doesn't think that way?" "How could I not know? Ever since Dan Wang started living in seclusion here, I've always been by his side. He's never had any children, and he's never been close to women. How could he possibly think of a little girl like you?" He snorted softly and said, "Dan Wang has gone into seclusion right now. When he comes out, I could take you to see him and ask him clearly." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He didn't say anything else and just drank his wine. "Little girl, how is it? How about taking me as your master? In this Pill King Valley, other than the Pill Kings, I am the most proficient alchemist. If you acknowledge me as your master, I can teach you how to refine pills. What kind of life essence pill you want? Pills that can increase your strength will be a piece of cake for me." Chapter 3182. Fengjiu stared at him, thought for a moment, and asked, "Don't you need to drink the oblivion water?" "No need." The old man waved the drumstick in his hand, and oil splashed out. "But I can't stay here for too long. I have to leave," Fengjiu said. "It's okay. As long as you get the hang of it, you can leave if you want," the old man said with a smile. Fengjiu said, "Can you protect me in here?" I can. If you become my disciple, everyone here will have to treat you with respect," the old man said. Hearing this, Fengjiu said, "I still have a few subordinates not far from here. I have to bring them over first." "No problem. The old man said, looking at Fengjiu. So you're ready to become my disciple? You haven't told me your identity yet, right? Fengjiu looked at him and said, Huh. He stroked his beard and looked at him with a smile. I'm Dan Wang. He seemed a little embarrassed. Don't worry. I'm not the perverted person you're talking about. It's just that some time ago, I felt that I had no one to pass on my skills to, and I didn't have anyone to serve me. I didn't expect my subordinates to misunderstand me. He glanced at Fengjiu and said, Where are your subordinates? I'll ask you to bring them here. I'll go myself. Otherwise, they won't come, Fengjiu said, patting his red clothes and brushing away the grass on his robes as he looked at the old man. All right, since I have nothing else to do, I'll go with you. He put down his things and stood up. He took out a cloth to wipe his hands and said, Let's go, let's go. Thus, Fengjiu brought the old man to where Du Fan and the others were. She had thought about it. This old man's strength was unfathomable, and his attainments in alchemy were also extraordinary. Now that she had stepped into this place, it was impossible for her to leave easily. Since that was the case, she might as well take him as her master. Learning alchemy from him would also allow Du Fan and the others to recuperate here. Moreover, she had to admit that the dust for getting water, immortal intoxication, and level 7 and above medicinal pills made her have the urge to learn. It was rare for her to meet someone whose strength, cultivation, and talent in alchemy were above hers. If she were to leave now, it would seem that she was missing an opportunity. Du Fan and the others rested in the forest while Tun Yun stood guard in the surroundings. It had shrunk its body and looked very inconspicuous. However, because of its presence, the surrounding beasts quickly left when they sensed its presence. They did not dare to approach. Master has been gone for quite some time. Why hasn't he returned yet? Could he have met with some danger? Luo Yu asked worriedly. With Master's strength, even if he met with danger, he should be able to resolve it. There's no need to worry, Du Fan said as he looked ahead, waiting for her to return. The first to notice Fengjiu's return was Tun Yun. It was patrolling the surroundings. When it saw that its master had returned with an old man behind her, it immediately became alert. Master! When they saw her, they all stood up and greeted her. They were a little surprised to see a dirty old man behind her. Dan Wang, who was following behind Fengjiu, glanced at them before shifting his gaze to Fengjiu. Chapter 3183. Thus, she led them to the valley of the Pill King. The Pill King followed at her side and said to Fengjiu, I say, disciple, your people are too weak. Why don't you hand them over to me and let me help you train them? No need. Fengjiu directly refused. You really don't give me any face. Dan Wang didn't get angry. He just smiled and looked at her. However, you're all injured like this. Could it be that you've provoked some enemy? From the looks of it, the other party almost killed you. Dan Wang Valley has been secluded from the world for many years. Even if I told you, you probably wouldn't know. As Fengjiu spoke, he flew them to Dan Wang Valley. Along the way, when Dan Wang opened the barrier, he followed him in and arranged for Du Fan and the others to rest in the cave. After they were settled, Dan Wang looked at Fengjiu with his hands behind his back and said, All right, you've brought your people. In a moment, I'll have my subordinates make arrangements for the apprenticeship ceremony tomorrow. After tomorrow, this old man will be your master. I can be your apprentice, but I won't kneel. Fengjiu looked at him and said. Hearing this, Dan Wang's hand that was stroking his beard paused. He stared at her for a while and nodded. All right, then you should rest well. Rest well. Tomorrow, someone will come to lead you to the front. After saying this, he didn't stay for long and turned to leave. After he left, Fengjiu walked to the cave where Du Fan and the others were resting. As soon as they entered, they asked, Master, who is that Dan Wang? Is it really okay for us to stay here? Master, are you really going to take him as your master? After a series of questions, Fengjiu raised his hand and said this Dan Wang Valley is isolated from the rest of the world, and the surrounding 10,000 miles are all dangerous places. It will be difficult for us to leave in a short time. In addition, all of you are seriously injured, so we can only stay here and recuperate. Moreover, the people in this place are not weak. The 3 people I've met so far are all stronger than me. Although it's very likely that it's because of the advancement pills, we have to stay here regardless of whether we're willing or not. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Since their master had said so, they definitely couldn't leave even if they wanted to. Since that was the case, they could only take one step at a time. At least for now, it seemed that Dan Wang wouldn't do anything to them. Recuperate first. My Immortal's Cave is less than 100 meters away from you. If you need anything, you can look for me. Feng Jiu told them to have a good rest first. Yes, they responded. They knew that they had to recuperate first before anything else. After returning to the Immortal's Cave to rest, Feng Jiu felt that today seemed a little messy. With Dan Wang's experience, she didn't believe that he couldn't see through her intentions, but he still said that he wanted to take her as his disciple. Perhaps it was true that he wanted to take her as his disciple, but she felt that letting her go after she learned something was definitely a lie. She reckoned that even if she really learned his skills, he definitely wouldn't be willing to let her leave this Dan Wang Valley and return to the secular world. However, she didn't say anything at the moment, so she could only take one step at a time. This contest had just begun, so it was a little too early to say these things now. What she didn't know was that on that night, the 2 middle-aged men who had drunk the drunken immortal had already woken up and appeared at Dan Wang's Immortal's Cave and were showered with dog blood. Chapter 3184. The alchemists in Dan Wang's valley couldn't help but look forward to it. Someone asked, "Is he going to pick someone from among us to be Dan Wang's disciple?" If that's the case, then that's great. If they can be Dan Wang's disciple, their alchemy skills will definitely be better. I just don't know who among us Dan Wang will pick to be his disciple, another alchemist said. He wasn't sure either. After all, in their opinion, the alchemists in the valley were all at the same level, so it was really hard to say. Hearing the words of the 2 alchemists, a cultivator stepped forward and whispered, "He's not going to pick someone from among us." Dan Wang picked a woman, a red-clothed woman who accidentally barged into Dan Wang's valley. She's extremely beautiful. Hearing this, those alchemists were startled. Someone from outside? How is that possible? Our valley is isolated from the rest of the world. Not just anyone can come here, let alone a woman. Could there be a mistake? There's no mistake. I've seen that woman before. She's very young. Dan Wang even went out with her a few days ago. When they came back, there were a few more injured people following them. I heard that Dan Wang wants to accept that woman as his successor. We'll be able to see her later. Hearing that person's words, all the alchemists were shocked and stunned. They thought that Dan Wang would pick one of them as his disciple, but they didn't expect that he would actually pick a woman from outside. How could a mere woman become a good alchemist? How could a woman be compared to them? Dan Wang was really muddle-headed. How could a woman catch Dan Wang's eye? I'd like to see what kind of skills this woman has. An alchemist said, his face darkening. That's right. I also want to see what's so outstanding about this woman that Dan Wang wants to accept as a successor. How could she make Dan Wang abandon us and choose her? That's right. If she doesn't have true ability, this old man won't accept it. If she doesn't have true ability, I won't admit that she's Dan Wang's successor. She's the next successor of Dan Wang's valley. Not bad. Exactly. I must find out what's going on. For a moment, all of them were in high spirits. They seemed to be very angry and very unwilling. If he was the successor of Dan Wang, then he would be the young master of Dan Wang Valley and the next successor of Dan Wang Valley. If such a person didn't have any real ability, how could they easily acknowledge him? When the King of Pills walked out with a woman in red, all of their gazes landed on the woman in red. With just one glance, they all frowned at the same time. He was too young. In front of them, Dan Wang was dressed in a wide white robe. His white hair and beard made him look like an immortal. He looked extraordinary. He walked slowly with his hands clasped behind his back. Out of the corner of his eye, he kept an eye on the red figure following behind him. Seeing her calm demeanor, he couldn't help but nod to himself. She was indeed worthy of being the person he had chosen. Her calm demeanor was extraordinary. At this moment, How could he know that Fengjiu was someone who had experienced countless things? How could a mere person from Dan Wang Valley shock her? As she walked forward, her gaze swept across the crowd below, sizing them up without batting an eyelid. She followed Dan Wang to the center. Seeing that Dan Wang had stopped, she stopped and stood quietly beside him, facing the crowd. Chapter 3185. As soon as Dan Wang's words came out, the people below began to discuss. Someone walked out and said, Dan Wang, this woman's background is unknown. Isn't taking her as a disciple too lightly? Our Dan Wang Valley has been isolated from the world for so many years. If something were to happen because of this, wouldn't it be too late for regrets? That's right. Moreover, since Dan Wang wants to take in a disciple, wouldn't it be too troublesome to take in someone who doesn't know anything about alchemy and teach her bit by bit? There are many outstanding alchemists in our Dan Wang Valley. If Dan Wang wants to take in a disciple, why doesn't he choose from among us? Taking in an outsider as a disciple and letting her become our Dan Wang Valley's young master. How can we accept this? If Dan Wang insists on taking her as a disciple, then let her show us her skills. As long as she can convince us, we'll acknowledge her as our young master. Otherwise, even if Dan Wang takes her as a disciple, we won't accept her, let alone acknowledge her. Hearing those alchemists' unconvinced voices, Dan Wang's eyes flashed. He didn't look surprised, and instead felt that it was a matter of course. He stroked his beard and smiled, then looked at Fengjiu. Xiaojiu, what do you think we should do about this? They won't accept you. Fengjiu glanced at Dan Wang and felt quite surprised. Becoming Dan Wang's disciple would make her the young master of Dan Wang Valley? So, this Dan Wang really wanted to take her as a disciple? Becoming your disciple would make her the young master of this place? Her eyes flashed, and she asked Dan Wang in a low voice. The smile on Dan King's face deepened as he nodded. That's right, becoming my disciple means becoming my successor. Naturally, you're also the young master of this place. You could be considered half a master of Dan King Valley. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. This benefit is not bad. Immediately, she stepped forward and looked at the dozen or so alchemists in front of her and said, I wonder what I have to do to make you submit to me. Actually, compared to this, she was more willing to use her fist to settle things. It was simple, crude, and direct, and if they didn't submit, she would beat them until they submitted. But when dealing with these pill masters, it seemed that she couldn't use this kind of crude method. Since you want to become Dan Wang's disciple, you naturally have to have some talent in the field of medicinal pills. Recognizing medicinal herbs, concocting medicinal pills, and concocting medicinal pills are all indispensable. The old man who spoke stared at the red-clothed Fengjiu and said, Miss, do you dare to give it a try? Fengjiu pursed her lips and smiled. Her eyes were full of smiles. Of course, it's just that. She paused and glanced at them. But what? Those alchemists asked. It's just that you're going against your superiors by testing me like this. After all, I'm Dan Wang's acknowledged disciple, the young master of Dan Wang Valley, and half your master. Hearing this, those pill masters' eyes flashed and they asked, Then what do you mean? Fengjiu walked slowly and looked at them with a smile in her clear eyes. I heard that all of you are pill masters who can refine 7th-level medicinal pills. Unfortunately, a few of my subordinates have suffered serious injuries and need a few pills. As long as all of you agree, after the 3 rounds of assessment, if I pass your assessment, then each of you will have to offer me a 7th-level core and a 7th-level vitality recovery pill. Hearing this, someone sneered, Your appetite is not small. Chapter 3186. Hearing this, the pill master glared at her and asked, What if you can't pass? If I can't pass everyone's assessment, I'll naturally leave this place, she said with a smile. Then, she turned to look at the king of elixirs and said, Furthermore, I will persuade the king of elixirs to choose a successor from among you. All right. As soon as she spoke, all the pill masters immediately agreed. Their fighting spirit was aroused, and they were determined to use everything they had to prevent her from passing the 3 stages of the assessment. When the others heard their conversation, their eyes flickered. Since the woman in red had spoken such words, they were afraid that the 3 stages of the assessment would not be so easy to pass. With the abilities of the pill masters, it should be easy for them to prevent her from passing the 3 stages. She had dug a hole for herself and jumped into it. It was such a good opportunity, but she had to turn into this. If she couldn't pass the 3 stages, even if Dan Wong stepped forward, he would not be able to salvage the situation. Dan Wong watched this scene and did not say anything. He only looked at them as if he was watching a good show. In the end, he asked someone to bring a chair over and sat down to watch the 3 stages of the assessment. He was happy that someone was helping him test Fengjio's abilities, so he naturally would not stop them. Furthermore, he felt that this little fellow, Fengjio, would bring him a pleasant surprise. He would just wait and see. Following the pill master's orders, the surrounding crowd dispersed and the wide and long medicine tables were placed together. 19 pill masters stood by the long tables. They looked at each other and each took out some spirit herbs. After filling the tables with these spirit herbs, they nodded in satisfaction and retreated to the side. There are over 1,000 types of spirit herbs here. The first stage is for you to pick out 100 types of spirit herbs from the list that we've given you. You have the time for 1 incense stick to burn. One of the alchemists paused for a moment before turning to Fengjio and saying, "If you're unable to pick out 100 herbs from the list within the time limit, you will be deemed to have failed the assessment. If the 100 herbs you pick out are different from those on the list, you will also be deemed to have failed the assessment." Hearing this, Fengjio glanced at the 1,000 types of spirit herbs on the table and nodded. I understand. Where's the list?" The pill masters looked at each other and handed over the list with the 100 types of spirit herbs to her. At the same time, they lit a stick of incense. Following the incense sticks burning, the assessment began. Fengjio then walked towards the table. She did not look at the spirit herbs on the table, but first looked at the list in her hand and memorized each one of the 100 types of spirit herbs. However, this action of hers caused the alchemist to sneer at her. Does she think she has a photographic memory? She actually wants to memorize the 100 types of spirit herbs on the list. The incense stick is burning, but she's still so calm. What a weirdo. She must feel that she has no way of informing them, so she's putting on an act. Why would Dan Wong choose such a person as a successor? This kind of woman, even if she were to become my disciple, I would still dislike her. Words of disdain came out from the mouths of the pill masters. It seemed that none of them were optimistic about Fengjio and felt that she was just a person with a false appearance. Chapter 31:87. Fengjio stood in front of the medicine table and glanced at the spiritual herbs. Then he began to pick out one spiritual herb after another. The speed at which she chose the spirit herbs was extremely fast. She didn't even need to think before she directly reached out to pick them up and place them on an empty table beside her. The 19 alchemists felt a sense of familiarity when they saw her holding the elixirs. Their eyelids couldn't help but twitch as they felt a sense of uneasiness in their hearts. Looking at this little girl's actions, why did it seem like she was very familiar with spirit herbs? Could it be that they had dug a hole and jumped into it themselves? Seeing the little girl pick out those spiritual herbs without even looking at the list of herbs, they couldn't help but be on guard. Looking at the incense stick, they saw that it had burned halfway, and there were at least 60 to 70 stalks of spiritual herbs on the table beside the little girl. They couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Could it be that he had passed this round? Among the 100 types of spiritual herbs, were there any that weren't taken wrongly? Because of their nervousness, they kept staring until they saw that there was still 1/3 of the incense stick left, and the red-clothed woman on the medicine table had already stopped. "All right," Fengjio said as he looked at them. The 19 alchemists widened their eyes. They stared at her for a long while before walking up to her with a list of the 100 herbs written on it and comparing them one by one. There's nothing wrong with the snake crouching seed. There's nothing wrong with the 9 strands root. There's nothing wrong with the crouching dragon. And there's nothing wrong with the 7-leaf purple core grass. They blindly matched the ingredients and saw that every single spirit herb was correct. Among them, they deliberately picked a few stalks of spirit herbs that were hard to distinguish whether it was their shape or smell, and mixed them in. Unexpectedly, she didn't make any mistakes either. The 19 alchemists holding the list looked at each other. They blinked their eyes and took a deep breath, suppressing the strange feeling in their hearts. Looking at the Fengjiu, they picked up a spirit herb and asked, "Let me ask you, what kind of spirit herb is this? What is its medicinal effect?" Fengjiu glanced at it and said with a smile, "This is the 7-inch heart-clearing grass. It has the effect of calming one's mind, calming one's qi, clearing one's heart, and resolving worries." "What about this one? Why did you take this one instead of this one?" The alchemist took out another spirit herb that looked similar to the 7-inch clear heart grass and placed it on the table. Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled. "The name on the list is 7-inch clear heart grass, but this one is inch green. Although they look the same, their medicinal effects are different. Moreover, when a 7-inch clear heart grass blossoms, its color is purple, but this inch green flower is light purple, and the roots under the leaves are also light purple. I naturally wouldn't mix them up." Hearing this, the alchemists were speechless for a long time, none of them able to refute. Could it be that this little girl already knew about the difference between these two spiritual herbs? Were they the ones who were fooling around and making a fool of themselves? Hee. Dan Wang, who was sitting on the side and watching the whole process, chuckled while stroking his beard. His face was smiling like a flower, and his eyes curved into crescents. He looked at the alchemists and said, "Everyone, she passed the first test, right?" Hearing Dan Wang's words, even if the 19 alchemists didn't want to admit it, they had no choice but to admit that Fengjiu had passed the first test. Thus, they nodded and looked at the red-clothed girl with a faint smile on her face, saying, she passed the first test." Chapter 3188. The 19 pill masters glared at her and cursed in their hearts. Shameless. She wanted them to be merciful so that she could hand over their 7th-level medicinal pills. She even wanted them to submit to her and respectfully address her as young master. They wished they could do everything in their power to stop her in this assessment and not give her any chance. "What are you going to test in the second round?" Dan Wang leisurely watched the show and asked. The 19 pill masters were stunned and were stumped for a moment. They were only discussing the first round just now because they felt that Fengjiu wouldn't be able to pass the first round, so they didn't think about how to test her in the second round. Looking at the stunned expressions of the dozen or so pill masters, Dan Wang smiled. "Don't tell me you haven't thought about it yet? Previously, you said that she could recognize herbs, make medicine, and refine pills. Since she's already passed the first round, then the second round is naturally about making medicine. Why don't you give her a prescription and let her make a medicine on the spot?" When Dan Wang said this, the pill masters looked at each other and felt that this method was feasible. So after discussing for a while, they nodded. "All right, then let's make medicine." So the 19 of them gathered together to discuss what kind of prescription to give to Fengjiu to refine. She was able to distinguish 100 types of spiritual herbs in less than an incense stick's worth of time. I think she should have dabbled in medicinal pills. The prescription we gave must not be too simple. Otherwise, it will be easy for her to pass. And that's reasonable. I feel that we should discuss the difficulty of this list. We can't give her a prescription that's too simple. Another pill master agreed. But we don't know how deep this little girl has dabbled in alchemy. If we give her a prescription that's too simple, she will easily pass. If we give her a prescription that's too difficult, it will seem like we're bullying her. This seems, for a moment, everyone hesitated. After all, they weren't ordinary pill masters. Adding on their age, they didn't want the people in Dan Wang's valley to think that they were bullying a little girl. How about this? Let's first ask her about her involvement in alchemy. If she's also an alchemist, then things will be much easier. An alchemist suggested, "Will she be honest? If she doesn't tell the truth, we won't know if what she said is true or false. Let's ask him first and see what he thinks." An old alchemist said as he looked towards Fengjiu, who was standing at the side. He cleared his throat and asked, "Miss, seeing how familiar you are with spiritual herbs, could it be that you are an alchemist?" Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed and he smiled. "Yes, I am an alchemist." Hearing this, everyone was a little surprised. Was he really an alchemist? Moreover, he told them so straightforwardly. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. For her straightforwardness and also for her honesty. Dan Wang, who was sitting at the side, didn't seem surprised when he heard Fengjiu's words. He only glanced at Fengjiu, then took a sip of the spirit tea offered by the medicine boy beside him. Alchemist? He had long seen that this little girl was an alchemist. Moreover, she was a master with a belly full of tricks. Chapter 3189. Hearing her say that she was a pill master so straightforwardly and honestly, the 19 pill masters were too embarrassed to ask any more questions. Thus, they continued to discuss. I think that her age is right there, so her years of pill refining should be around that. So even if she's a pill master, I reckon that no matter how talented she is, she should only be at the level of a pill ancestor. And I think so too. In any case, she won't surpass the level of a pill ancestor. So the prescription we give, as long as it's around this level, it should be able to stump her. Since that's the case, how about we use the prescription for the muscle revitalization jasper ointment? That prescription looks simple, but the steps are complicated. Furthermore, we can't be careless in the concoction of the medicine. If we use too much or too little medicine in a single step, the medicine refined won't be able to be used. The difficulty of that prescription is so high that even a pill saint might not be able to concoct it. I think that using that prescription to test her will definitely make her back down. Hearing this, the 19 pill masters looked at each other and nodded. Then we'll use this prescription. Thus, they handed the prescription to Fengjiu and said, "From now until noon, before the sun reaches the middle of the mountain, if you can refine the medicine according to this prescription, you'll pass. Of course, you must follow the instructions on this. If the steps of the medicine are wrong, then you'll also fail the test." Fengjiu took the prescription and looked at it, asking, "Is this prescription really as mentioned in the notes on it? It has the miraculous effect of dissolving decay, relieving pain, and healing muscles?" Of course, this is a prescription that the 19 of us have researched for many years. One of the pill masters said, as if he was very dissatisfied with being questioned. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and smiled. "Then I'll give it a try." Thus, she looked at the time and said, "Since noon is the time, then I'll start. Everyone, please take a rest at the side." She called over 2 medicine boys and cleared out a place for her. Then, she picked out the spiritual herbs on the list from the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Once all the spiritual herbs were gathered, she began to concoct the medicine according to the steps on the prescription. The prescription was a medicinal plaster, and it had to be decocted, so it would take a lot of time. Although she had refined some similar plasters in the past, they were different from this prescription. Therefore, with this prescription, it could be said that she was experimenting with a new kind of medicine. Because it was her first time refining and she was following the steps of this prescription, after a few incense sticks worth of time, she added a problem with the amount of medicine that she added during the brewing process, causing the ointment to sizzle and emit a trace of sparks. Following that, a burnt smell spread out. Seeing this scene and smelling the burnt smell, the 19 alchemists couldn't help but laugh. I said I knew she wouldn't be able to concoct the muscle revitalization jasper ointment. Is that ointment something that just anyone can make? I've already told her before that as long as there's a slight imbalance in the amount of medicine added, the whole pot of medicine will be ruined. She should have been more careful, but now she's hit a wall, right? An alchemist by the side laughed and said, "You can't blame her. Who hasn't been young and frivolous before? It's already pretty good that she made us take out the prescription of the jasper cream to test her." Chapter 3190. Hearing their words, Dan Wang stroked his beard and smiled. "It's too early to say that. Who can say for sure whether she can pass the test until the last moment? Hearing that, the 19 alchemists looked at him. Dan Wang seems to have high hopes for her. But, Dan Wang, have you forgotten that she is just a woman, and she is still young? Does Dan Wang really think she can make the formula that was developed by 19 of us? It's useless to say more. Let's wait and see. Dan Wang smiled and didn't argue with them. Feng Jiu, who was making the ointment, didn't take their words to heart. She was concentrating on the formula and the ointment. She failed for the first time, but she still had time. She could take her time to study it. She was sure she could make the ointment. The people around her were watching. Because it was an open process, her every move was seen by everyone. Therefore, her careful addition of the medicine naturally fell into everyone's eyes as well. They couldn't help but think, maybe she really can't make the ointment. After all, this was a prescription that 19 pill masters had researched and refined for many years. She was such a young woman who had never come into contact with this prescription before, so how could she possibly refine this ointment in such a short period of time? However, when everyone thought it was impossible, Feng Jiu was still concentrating on making the ointment. Those alchemists also sat down on the field with their legs crossed. Some started to cultivate, some were dozing off. Even Dan Wang couldn't help falling asleep while waiting. The 19 alchemists were also yawning with their eyes half closed. Their eyelids were drooping, as if they had fallen asleep. As time went by, a strong medicinal fragrance spread out. Those people who were dozing off couldn't help but feel shocked when they smelled the medicinal fragrance. They suddenly woke up. What a strong medicinal fragrance. This medicinal fragrance is so familiar. Is this the smell of the muscle revitalization jasper ointment? No, it smells even better than that. The medicinal fragrance is even stronger. The alchemists rubbed their eyes and looked at Feng Jiu in front of them. They saw that she was brewing the ointment, and the ointment was gradually taking shape. It emitted a rich medicinal fragrance and a jade-like, sparkling green color. She has successfully brewed the jasper ointment? That's not right. Why is the color of her ointment even better than the ointment we made? The aura of spiritual energy hovering above the medicine is also extremely dense and pure. This can't be. She upgraded the flesh regeneration jasper ointment. Is this an upgraded version? Another alchemist took over the other's words and stared at the ointment Feng Jiu was brewing in disbelief. Is that possible? How is it possible to change the prescription if it's just following the prescription? Was there a mistake somewhere? Or did she make a mistake? Someone said in disbelief. He didn't believe that Feng Jiu could brew the ointment and even upgrade the grade of the ointment. Dan Wang narrowed his eyes and smiled. Not bad. She's really worthy of being my disciple. Chapter 3191. Dan Wang nodded. Yes, judging from medicinal fragrance and color, she has indeed improved the flesh jasper ointment by a level. It seems that your 2 tests are not difficult for her. The 19 alchemists were speechless for a moment. None of them knew what to say. They just stared at Feng Jiu, watching her boil the ointment and put it in front of them. They raised their heads and looked above their heads. It was not time yet, but she had already finished. Take a look. Feng Jiu put the ointment on the table and sighed softly. She took out 2 cups of spirit wine from her space and drank it to ease the tension. The 19 alchemists surrounded her. 19 heads poked forward at the same time to study it. One by one, they said something. Not bad. The color is indeed better than the ointment we brewed. The medicinal fragrance is also very pure and strong. The aura of spiritual power in this ointment is also very pure. The color of the ointment is not mixed. It is dark green, almost like jade. It is really of the highest quality. Listening to the alchemists, the surrounding people were very surprised. They looked at each other and wanted to go forward to take a look. However, they could not squeeze forward. Someone asked, "Is this flesh jasper ointment really better than the previous one?" Even Dan Wang said it is good. Can it be wrong? So, she also passed the second test. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes fell on the woman in red. They did not expect her to be so powerful. She actually passed 2 tests in a row. It should be known that the 19 alchemists did not go easy on her in order to prevent her from passing. Even so, she passed easily. It could be seen that she was really capable. Also, if she didn't have the ability, if she didn't have anything special about her, why would the Pill King abandon the 19 alchemists in Pill King's Valley and pick her as a successor? The 19 alchemists looked at the ointment and knew that they could not find any problems with it. They did not give her any pointers on the prescription, but she brewed the ointment based on her own ability. Moreover, the purity of the ointment was better than theirs. How could they not let her pass? What level of alchemist are you? How can you refine such a prescription so easily? An alchemist finally could not help but ask. He wanted to know what level of alchemist she was. Otherwise, they would be too aggrieved. Hearing this, all the alchemists' eyes fell on Fengjiu. They said in unison, "Yes." What level of alchemist are you? You can refine such a prescription so casually. It can be seen that you are not an ordinary alchemist. Dan King's eyes sparkled as he looked at her. Stroking his beard, he chuckled. "That's right, little disciple. Until now, Master still doesn't know what level of alchemist you are. Now that you've passed 2 rounds, shouldn't you also reveal everything to us?" You. Fengjiu smiled and looked at them. He took out a senior alchemist badge from his space and wore it on his chest. He smiled and said, "I should be a senior alchemist." Looking at the shining badge under the sun, everyone's breathing quickened. Their eyes widened as they stared at the shining badge of Alchemy Venerable. They couldn't help but curse out loud. Chapter 3192. That's right. Too shameless. She's actually an Alchemy Venerable, and you're actually acting like you don't know anything. Too shameless. This old man has lived for so many years, and I've never met someone as shameless as you. This is simply deceiving us. She's an Alchemy Venerable, but we still want to test her knowledge of spiritual herbs and how to make medicine. This is simply like asking a child's question to an adult. Too shameless. Taking advantage of us. Looking at the alchemy master's faces flushed red with anger, Fengjiu was stunned and said very innocently, "It's not that I want to hide it from you, but that you never asked me." Hearing these words, the 19 alchemists held their breaths. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They only felt that their stomachs were filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. Wasn't that right? They asked her earlier if she was an alchemy master, and she said yes. She told them honestly, but they didn't ask what level she was at. They just thought that with her age, even if she was an alchemy master, her level wouldn't be high. Who knew that she was already an alchemy venerable? After seeing Fengjiu's badge, Dan Wang's eyes lit up. Not bad, not bad. You're already an alchemy venerable at such a young age. It's really not bad. Those alchemy masters looked at Fengjiu's innocent face, then looked at her badge and gritted their teeth. You're already an alchemy venerable, and you can refine 7th level medicinal pills yourself. Why do you still covet our 7th level medicinal pills? This person was too shameless. She herself was an alchemy venerable level alchemist. That 7th tier medicinal pill should have already been refined by her, yet she actually had ideas about their medicinal pills. It was really too outrageous. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Although I can refine 7th level medicinal pills, not all medicinal pills can be refined successfully. Besides, 7th level medicinal pills are so hard to find. Even if I wanted to refine them, I might not be able to do it casually." She paused for a moment before continuing with a smile. "Moreover, as I said earlier, it just so happens that a few of my subordinates are injured. If they pass, I can use your pills to treat their injuries. That's not a bad thing. Cunning as a fox. He actually dared to scheme against us and want our medicinal pills. This is too outrageous." Fengjiu's lips curled into a smile as he looked at them and said, "Now that we've passed the 2nd test, do you think it's necessary to test us again for the 3rd test?" Hearing this, the 19 alchemists couldn't help but widen their eyes. They were already alchemy venerables. What the hell were they still taking the test for? She could even refine a 7th tier medicinal pill. So what else could they use to test her? Seeing that none of them spoke, Fengjiu's smile deepened. So, you all acknowledge my strength. Was it possible to deny it? Being alchemy venerable level at a young age, who among them could compare to this talent? One had to know that they had cultivated wholeheartedly for many years to reach this year's level of strength. Compared to this little girl, they couldn't compare at all. Seeing that none of them had anything to say, Fengjiu smiled as he turned around and walked in front of Dan Wang. He picked up the tea that was placed on the side and bowed with both hands as he offered it. Disciple Fengjiu invites master to drink tea. Dan Wang narrowed his eyes, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He nodded and was about to reach out to serve the tea when he heard a voice. Chapter 3193. The old man stared at Fengjiu and asked, "Since you've become his disciple, why don't you kneel and kowtow?" Fengjiu glanced at the old man and said, "Before I started cultivating, my meridians were sealed and I couldn't cultivate. It was my master who opened my meridians and helped me walk the path of cultivation." Her voice paused and her expression carried a trace of sadness. "My master is no longer in this world. He has a special meaning to me. Apart from him, I won't kneel and kowtow to anyone else. I've already made this clear to my master before I agreed to become his disciple." Hearing this, the old man's mouth opened slightly. He was somewhat stunned. He didn't expect this to be the reason. After a moment of silence, he nodded and retreated to the side without saying another word. Dan Wang's eyes flashed, and he nodded with a smile. "That's right. Fengjiu already told me that she won't kneel and kowtow, and I also agreed. As long as she has me as her master in her heart, it's enough. Whether she kneels or not isn't important." As he spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu and took a sip of the tea. He then placed the teacup to the side and said, "From today onwards, you are my disciple and also the young master of Dan Wang Valley. Master doesn't have much to give you, and I'll give you some things related to alchemy." He took out a medical book and a bottle of pills, saying, "Take these as a gift for becoming my disciple." "Many thanks, master." Fengjiu received them and thanked him before putting them away. Seeing this, the alchemists glanced at each other before taking out pills from their sleeves one by one. Taking out 2 seventh-order pills, they presented them to Yang Kai. Every alchemist took out 2 pills, and the bottles were placed neatly on the table. After the 19 alchemists were lined up neatly, they bowed to Dan Wang and congratulated him. "Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang." After he finished speaking, he bowed to Fengjiu. "Greetings, young Valley Master. We have offended you before. Please forgive us." Dan Wang looked at Fengjiu with a smile and gestured for her to speak. When Fengjiu saw this, he said, "It's only natural for you all to test me. I won't take it to heart. Young Valley Master is magnanimous." As the crowd spoke, they finally smiled and said, "Young Valley Master, these are our pills. Each of them is at the 7th level. Please check them." Fengjiu glanced at the pills and said with a smile, "I trust you." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeve and put all the pills into her space. She didn't check them. Her actions won the trust and respect of the crowd. It made sense. A person at such a young age who was so outstanding in both ability and talent in alchemy was their young Valley Master. What else could they be dissatisfied with? Although she was a woman, she also showed them that she wasn't inferior to them as a woman. Naturally, they wouldn't act one way behind her back. "Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang. Greetings, young master." The crowd's voices rang out again. This time, it was the entire Dan Wang Valley shouting. Their voices were loud and echoed in the valley for a long time. In the afternoon, Fengjiu came to the cave abode where Du Fan and the others were. As soon as he entered, they surrounded him. Chapter 3194. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Don't worry, they didn't make things difficult for me. Furthermore, from today onwards, I am also half a master of this Dan Wang Valley." Hearing this, they couldn't help but look at each other. Fan Lin asked, "Mistress, Will they let us leave when the time comes? Right now, these aren't problems at all. Don't think too much about it. Come, I brought some medicinal pills for you. Take them and adjust your breathing. These medicinal pills will allow your internal injuries to quickly recover. As she spoke, she took out the medicinal pills she had received earlier from her space. When the bottles were placed in front of them, Fan Lin smelled the medicinal fragrance and couldn't help but open one of the bottles to take a look. He couldn't help but be stunned. Mistress, this is a 7th level medicinal pill. That's right, it's a 7th level medicinal pill. This is an inner core. After taking it, your internal injuries will recover in half an hour. She smiled and gestured. Don't just stand there. Quickly take the medicinal pills and adjust your breathing. Heal your internal injuries first, then we'll talk about other things. Also, here's a bottle of jade flesh ointment. It's extremely effective for external injuries. You guys can try it later. Hearing this, they hurriedly came back to their senses. After responding, they each took one medicinal pill and sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing. Fengjiu left Tun Yun behind to guard them while she went back first. She hadn't even reached her immortal's cave when someone called out to her on the way. Young mistress, Dan Wang wants you to go to the back of the mountain. A medicine boy jogged in front of her and said. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded her head and said, Understood. After responding, she went to the back of the mountain. When she arrived, she saw a pill cauldron placed there. Dan Wang was sitting cross-legged in front of the pill cauldron. Walking forward, she glanced at the pill cauldron and asked, Master, why are you looking for me? I have a pill formula here. I plan to let you refine it. As he spoke, Dan Wang handed a piece of paper to her. Fengjiu took a look at it and was slightly startled. Beast form pill? What kind of pill is this? How come she hadn't heard of this pill before? Moreover, there were no notes on the formula. She didn't know what this beast form pill was used for. However, beast form? Could it be a pill related to beasts? Was it for beasts to consume? She guessed in her heart and asked, Master, what is this beast form pill's use? What can it do after refining it? Dan King had no idea where he got the wine from. He lay down on the ground and started drinking. I told you to practice, so practice. What's the point of asking so much? If you want to know how to refine it, you will know. Hearing this, She looked around, T. Our Danwang Valley has a lot of spirit herbs. If you need spirit herbs, you can go to the medicine field or the medicine storehouse. You don't need to tell me. He waved his hand and jumped up. I'm going back to rest. I'll give you 3 days. If you can't refine the beast form pill in 3 days, your master will punish you. Fengjiu was slightly startled, seeing him wave his hand and leave. She couldn't help but think. Punishment? What kind of punishment? Chapter 3195. After he left, Fengjiu took a look at the spiritual medicine listed on the recipe and walked towards the spiritual medicine mountain. There were all kinds of spiritual medicine planted in this valley, and there was even a spiritual medicine storage. It shouldn't be difficult for her to find these spiritual medicine. However, if she had to find them herself, it would take some time. After all, he only gave her 3 days to concoct this beast form pill, especially when she heard the words he said before he left and saw the malicious smile and eyes. She faintly felt that if she couldn't concoct this beast form pill in 3 days, she would really be punished. Moreover, this punishment would be beyond her expectations. Thinking of this, she hurriedly gathered her thoughts and hurried to find this spiritual medicine. Danwang Valley wasn't small, and it took a lot of effort to find the spiritual medicine all over the mountain. In particular, the medicine boys seemed to have received orders from her master and were not allowed to help her gather the spiritual medicine. They were only allowed to tell her which area had the spiritual medicine she needed. By the time she had gathered all the spiritual medicine herbs listed on the recipe, it was already late at night. When she came out of the spiritual medicine storage, her heart couldn't help but tremble. This was because she saw that there were many boxes in the spiritual medicine storage with the names of precious spiritual medicine that were thousands of years old. It was a pity that they were locked. Otherwise, she would have taken them out to take a look. If it was any other time, 3 days would be more than enough for her to concoct a single pill. However, the steps and time required for this beast form pill were rather long. She could only open the furnace and give it a try. She didn't know what his intentions were, but he placed the furnace at the back of the mountain. It seemed like he wanted her to concoct the pill in the back of the mountain. Thus, after she brought the spiritual medicine over, she tidied up her things and placed the spiritual medicine she needed on the side. Then, she lit up a torch to illuminate the area. After she had prepared everything, she looked at the furnace and her eyes flashed. Was this old man testing her? He actually got this furnace for her to concoct pills? The beast form pill was a 7th level pill. How could such an ordinary pill furnace withstand it? Thus, just as she was about to move the cauldron to the side and take out her own cauldron, a little medicine boy quickly ran out. Young master, you can't move." The little medicine boy looked like he was only 8 or 9 years old. His young and tender face was full of seriousness. The Valley Master said that young master can only use this pill furnace to refine pills and nothing else. Fengjiu blinked and looked at the little medicine boy. She asked, "Where did you come from? Why didn't she notice him earlier?" "I came from there. The Valley Lord asked me to assist the young master." The medicine boy turned around and pointed before looking at Fengjiu. "The Valley Head has instructed me to stop young master if I see him changing the furnace." "Stop what?" "This pill furnace can't be used to refine 7th grade pills. The moment it is refined, the furnace will explode," she said snappily and patted the pill furnace. "Do you know that the furnace will explode? Even the furnace and the pills in it are gone." The little medicine boy shook his head and said with a serious face, "I don't know, and I've never seen it before. The people in the valley have never exploded their cauldrons when refining pills." Hearing this, Fengjiu only felt a breath stuck in her throat, unable to go up or down. That old man sent a little brat to cause trouble, right? "You stay here," she ordered. Just as she was about to leave, she was pulled by the corner of her clothes. Chapter 3196. The corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched. That old man had used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills? She couldn't help but look suspiciously at the pill furnace again. She carefully looked at it and saw that it was just an ordinary pill furnace. However, that old man wouldn't use this to deceive her, right? Could it be that he had really used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills? Thinking of this, she decided to give it a try, first to see if there was anything special about this pill furnace. She signaled for the little medicine boy to retreat to the side. With a flip of her palm, spiritual energy circulated in her palm, and a ball of flame shot up from her palm. As she raised her hand, it flew into the furnace along with a gust of spiritual energy. With a whoosh, the flames ignited and the temperature of the entire pill furnace slowly rose. When the temperature of the pill furnace was about right, she first placed the few spirit herbs that she had already processed into it. The fusion of the flames and spirit energy quickly dissolved the spirit herbs. The little medicine boy stood at the side and watched. Seeing that she didn't need his help, he stepped back a little and didn't dare to disturb her. However, just as he was about to find a place to sit down, he heard a loud rumbling sound. He was so frightened that he jumped up and cried out in alarm. Boom! The pills in the pill furnace suddenly exploded. They exploded out of the furnace and scattered on the ground. A strong spiritual energy and airflow rushed out of the furnace, and the entire pill furnace flew up and rolled more than 10 meters away. The loud rumbling sound was extremely loud in the night. Almost at the same time, more than 10 figures quickly rushed over. What happened? What happened? What's going on? The cultivators in the valley were all experts above the heavenly god realm, but they were all frightened by this loud sound. This was because their valley had always been peaceful, and it had never been like this before. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound rang out, as shocking as heavenly thunder. However, when they arrived, they saw a red-clothed Fengjiu with some medicinal dregs splattered on his body and his face blackened by smoke. More than 10 meters away, a pill furnace with a small flame was still rolling down the slope. Seeing this, one of the cultivators hurriedly rushed forward and caught the pill furnace that was rolling down, placing it in front of Fengjiu. He looked at Fengjiu and smiled. He sighed in relief and said, "We were wondering what happened. So it was young Valley Master refining pills. You really scared us. Is young Valley Master hurt?" Another cultivator asked. He saw that Feng Ix's face was dark and there were flames in her eyes. She looked angry. "I'm fine." After Fengjiu took a deep breath, he looked at them and said, "Master told me to refine a pill in 3 days. I think something similar will happen in the next few days. You don't have to come every time." Okay. They laughed awkwardly. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, they turned and left. After they left, Fengjiu brushed off the medicinal dregs on his body. His gaze fell on the pill furnace in front of him, and he frowned slightly. At this time, the little medicine boy hiding in the back carefully walked forward, as if afraid that Fengjiu would scold him. He quickly said, "Young master, the furnace didn't explode. It's the medicine that exploded." Chapter 3197. That's right. This cauldron didn't explode. She smiled mysteriously as her gaze fell on the cauldron. The medicine had exploded, but the cauldron hadn't? Something wasn't right. Yes. The Valley Master said that the cauldron wouldn't explode and could refine pills. The little medicine boy hurriedly said, as if to prove that what he said was true. His clear eyes were still tightly fixed on the cauldron that hadn't exploded. Seeing this, Fengjiu chuckled softly. "I know." She looked around and said, "It's late. You should go back and rest. I don't need your help here." But the Valley Master asked me to come and help. As the little medicine boy spoke, he lowered his head slightly and stood still with his little fingers touching each other. He didn't want to leave. Fengjiu smiled and asked, "You're so young. What can you help me with here?" I can deliver the medicine." "Young master, tell me what you want me to do. I will help." He blinked and raised his head with a serious expression, as if he wanted to convince Fengjiu. He puffed out his little chest. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, "Then how about this? You go back and rest first. Come over early tomorrow morning to help." It was definitely not good to let such a young child stay up late. It was better to send him back first. The little medicine boy wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He only nodded and promised, "I'll come over tomorrow morning." As he spoke, he quickly turned and ran off. Seeing the little medicine boy run off, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle softly. She couldn't help but think of little Hauer at home. That little guy had just learned how to walk. She wondered when he would be able to run as fast as that. And Zay, she wondered if he had come out of seclusion. Thinking about it, if she didn't go back, her family would probably be worried. Thinking of this, she remembered that she hadn't told them that she was safe. She wondered if Fan Lin and the others had sent a message back. She had forgotten to ask them. Looking at the night sky, she took out her communication jade tablet. Originally, she wanted to send a message to Zay, but when she remembered that he was in seclusion, she used her communication jade tablet to tell Lung Hua about the situation here in the night sky. She continued to refine pills. However, throughout the night, the pills were still blown out, but the cauldron wasn't damaged. She studied it for a long time, but she couldn't figure out what was so special about it. Seeing that the sky gradually brightened and the east was gradually brightened, an idea flashed across her mind. She, who was originally sitting on the ground, but she immediately jumped. "I know. Her head's in test SS, right? It's the controls SS. T test SS. S is T. At that moment, she was prepared to refine it again to verify if her guess was correct. However, at this moment, she saw a small figure carrying a food box carefully walk over. He even used one hand to protect the food box, as if to prevent the contents from spilling out. Fengjiu looked at the sky and was surprised. This little brat actually woke up so early? And what did he bring? "Young master, I'm here." As the little medicine boy spoke, he quickened his pace and carefully placed the food box on the table. He said, "I've also brought breakfast for young master." Chapter 3198. I brought some salty porridge and steamed buns. The people in the kitchen said they were steamed buns made from spirit pork. I ate them just now, and they were delicious. There's also a pie. As he spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Young master, is this enough? If it's not enough, I'll go back and get more." "It's enough." Fengjiu smiled and reached out to pinch his face. As expected, 2 black fingerprints were left on his face. She chuckled and took out her hands to wash them. She asked, "Did you come here after eating? Then you must have woken up before the sun rose." The little medicine boy nodded. "Yes, I woke up when the rooster crowed." After washing her hands, Fengjiu placed the food on the ground and sat on the grass to eat. She asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Tian Dong. I was picked up by the valley master." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him. "Oh, so you grew up here?" "Yes, I grew up here. The people in the valley are all very good. The people in the kitchen often give me food to eat." Speaking of this, the little medicine boy smiled happily. Fengjiu nodded and didn't say anything else. She just handed the steamed buns to him. "You eat this. I'll be full after eating this porridge and steamed buns." "But I just ate." "Then you can keep it. You can eat it when you're hungry." Fengjiu quickly finished the porridge and steamed buns in front of her and asked, "I don't know what I want you to help me with. How about this? You just have to bring me food 3 times a day. However, if I'm refining pills, you can't disturb me." Hearing this, Tian Dong nodded. "Yes." After eating her fill, Fengjiu tried again. She first tried to control the flame's balance. Logically speaking, she was already very proficient in controlling the flame's balance, so there shouldn't be any accidents. After trying again, she found that the problem wasn't in the flame's balance, but in the spiritual medicine she threw in. This was troublesome. Or was it because of the spirit herbs? How could she prevent the spirit herbs from colliding with each other? The beast form pill was also a 7th level pill, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult to refine. For the past 2 days, she had been trying to figure out how to concoct this beast form pill. However, no matter how she tried to concoct it according to the pill formula or her own method, she was still unable to successfully concoct this beast form pill. Seeing that the 3 days were almost up, she still hadn't made any progress. On the 3rd day, Dan Wang was wearing a gray robe. He stroked his beard as he slowly walked over. He seemed to have expected that Fengjiu would not be able to refine the beast form pill. When he arrived in front of her, he glanced at the pill furnace that didn't have the slightest bit of heat. He then glanced at Fengjiu, who was sitting on the ground, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? You can't make it." Fengjiu stood up and said, "Master, please guide me." She really didn't know which step she had gone wrong. She had concocted level 7 elixirs many times, but she couldn't concoct this level 7 beast form elixir. It's not difficult to guide you, but the punishment." He stroked his beard and glanced at Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and asked, "Master, how do you want to punish me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his palm and a medicinal pill appeared in his hand. Chapter 3199. What kind of pill is this? Fengjiu asked, her gaze falling on the pill. Seeing that it was actually a 7th level pill, the corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. This old man, he even took out a 7th level pill to punish her? Sure enough, Dan Wang was amazing. He didn't even take a 7th level pill seriously. You'll know once you eat it. Dan Wang chuckled and said, "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." Fengjiu rolled her eyes. Of course, she knew it wasn't poisonous, but the problem was she didn't want to be a lab rat. She took a step back and said, "Master, change the punishment method. You said that I'm a pill refiner. I'm already sick of the smell of pills. You still want me to eat pills, isn't this?" Before she could finish her words, the old man in front of her had already appeared in front of her in a flash. He sealed her acupoints at a speed that was too fast for her ears to cover. At the same time, he stuffed the pill in her mouth. He lifted her chin with one hand, and the pill slid down her throat. Seeing Fengjiu staring blankly, Dan Wang smiled and stroked his beard. Why are you saying so much? I've always been a man of my word. If I say I'll punish you, then I'll punish you. Moreover, it's not a physical punishment, but a pill punishment. Hee hee. Didn't you want to know what kind of pill this is? Don't worry, you'll know in a while. Fengjiu stared at him. She didn't expect him to use force without saying anything. She knew that his strength was unfathomable, but she didn't expect him to be so fast that she didn't even have a chance to react. At this moment, her entire body was tense, unable to move an inch, and she couldn't even speak. She couldn't help but hold her breath, her face flushed red. This old man, he was too sinister. And, let me think, where should I send you? He stroked his beard and paced back and forth beside Fengjiu. He stared at her for a while and clapped his hands. I got it. Fengjiu faintly had a bad premonition. She wanted to ask, but she couldn't say anything. Thus, she asked with her spiritual sense. In any case, I call you master. No matter what, you have to be merciful. Don't make me too miserable, right? Hearing this, the old man chuckled. Disciple, master won't prank you. Master is doing this for your own good. As he spoke, he used his spiritual energy to draw an ancient array on the ground. The array glowed with a rich spiritual energy. After looking at the array, he smiled with satisfaction and pushed Fengjiu to the center of the array. Disciple, take care of yourself. You must come back alive. As the old man spoke, he left a trace of his spiritual sense on Fengjiu when she wasn't paying attention. Then, he activated the array. With a burst of dazzling light, Fengjiu disappeared into the array. As if space had been twisted, Fengjiu only felt a splitting headache. She lost her balance and was sucked into a bottomless black hole. When her body landed, she realized that she was in a forest. When she felt that she could move, she stood up and stretched her arms and legs. However, at this moment, a light flashed on her body and she transformed into the appearance of a fire phoenix. The red clothes on her body became her feathers. The difference between her and Fire Phoenix was that although she was in the shape of a bird, the feathers on her body were the dazzling red of her clothes. Chapter 3200. He actually gave me a beast form pill? What is this old man trying to do? She only felt a surge of anger rising from her chest. She never thought that she would actually turn into a bird. She wondered how long the effects of this beast form pill would last. Don't tell me they're going to throw me into this unknown place and let me live here in this beast form. Thinking of this, she even had the urge to kill someone. Look, there's a red bird over there. No, that's a phoenix. The sudden sound of surprise made Fengjiu come back to her senses. She took a deep breath and coldly glanced in the direction of the sound. However, this look only made her even angrier. She originally thought that it was a human who knew that it was actually a demon. The trees in front of her were probably over 1,000 years old and had cultivated into demon forms. At this moment, they were excitedly waving their branches and leaves as they stared at her. When she looked around, she saw that the trees that were originally no different from ordinary trees. After the sound came out, a face appeared on each of the trees. Catch it. A bit of phoenix blood essence is enough for us to escape from our tree forms. The tree demons excitedly said and waved their branches, wanting to catch Fengjiu. No, in the eyes of the tree demons, it was only a small phoenix, a beautiful little phoenix with dazzling red feathers. Seeing the tree demons waving their branches over, Fengjiu narrowed her eyes. She gathered the spiritual energy in her body and flapped her wings to fly up. With a thought, her spiritual energy surged and flames flew out along with her wings, attacking the tree demons. Mere little demons dare to be impudent in front of me. She flew high up in the sky and looked down at the tree demons that were struggling and screaming in the flames. Hiss, in the flames, the tree demons waved their branches. The leaves were burned in the flames, and the branches became charred. In the end, they turned into a pile of black charcoal, leaving behind only the wails and screams in the wind. Fengjiu stopped in the sky and looked down at the scene below. In her mind, she wondered how Du Fan and the others' injuries were. After taking that pill, if they were lucky, they might be able to take advantage of that 7th level pill to advance, right? There was also cloud swallowing. Just as she was thinking about swallowing clouds, she suddenly felt a flash of light and turned into the appearance of a cloud-swallowing beast in midair. It was still just that the fur on its body was red. This sudden change caught her off guard, and she lost her balance in midair and fell down. She let out a cry of surprise and fell head first. However, just as she was about to hit the ground, she changed back into her fire phoenix form. With a flap of her wings, she stabilized herself and flew up steadily. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This beast form pill took the form of the beast she contracted with. She muttered softly. She looked at her current appearance, and with a thought, she transformed back into Lao Bai's appearance. As expected, she changed back again, still maintaining the shape of a fire phoenix. She looked around, and her gaze fell on a tall mountain not far away. Thus, she flew over there, intending to go up and see what kind of place this was. After taking the beast form pill, not only could she take the form of her contracted beast, she could also use the contracted beast battle skills and specialties. After experimenting as she flew, she finally took the form of a fire phoenix and turned into an ordinary little bird. Chapter 3201. However, she was still too naive. As she flew all the way to the mountain peak, the demons in the forest ran amok, and there were even giant bird-type monsters attacking her. When she finally reached the top of the mountain peak, she looked around and could not help but be stunned. As far as the eye could see, there were only forests and mountain peaks. There was no end in sight, as if there was no way out. What the hell is this place? She muttered. At this moment, a dark cloud suddenly shrouded over her head. She looked up and saw a giant eagle swooping down, its 2 curved claws grabbing at her. Damn it! She cursed under her breath and quickly leaped forward. However, as soon as she flew out in the form of a small bird, she was caught by the eagle's claws. Her entire body was brought up to the top of the forest. After flipping over a few mountain peaks, she was finally thrown into a nest on a cliff. As soon as she was thrown into the nest, a few small eagles pounced on her, their curved beaks pecking at her. She immediately waved her hand and brushed the small eagles away. Seeing the old eagle standing at the side and staring at her, she narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "If you don't let your children go, be careful that I'll roast them all." When the old eagle heard this, it was instantly enraged and stomped down with its claws. Feng Jiu was also enraged when he saw this and immediately shot a flame at the old eagle. The old eagle probably did not expect a strange-looking bird to be able to spit fire, and its feathers were burned by the flame before it could react. The eagle screeched and flapped its wings in an attempt to extinguish the flame. At the same time, its claws were once again aimed at Feng Jiu. The 2 birds of different sizes, one big and one small, started fighting at the cliff, scaring the small eagles to the side. After fighting with Feng Jiu, the old eagle, who was clearly at a disadvantage, curled up in fear, trying to cover its body that had been burned to the point where only a few feathers were left. It asked in a shrill voice, "What kind of bird are you? Why has it never met a bird like this before?" Its combat power was too ferocious. The feathers on its body were almost burned away by its flames. Feng Jiu glanced at the retreating old eagle and then at the small eagles. Perhaps because she saw that the old eagle still had a few small eagles to raise, she was merciful and did not directly kill it. "Who told you that I'm a bird?" Feng Jiu glanced at it and said, "Let me ask you, where is this place? How big is this forest?" Hearing this, the old eagle looked at Feng Jiu strangely and said, "You don't know? Why are you here if you don't know? Could it be that you came from somewhere else?" "I'm asking you a question," Feng Jiu's eyes as she looked at the old eagle. Hearing this, Feng Jiu frowned. Why did the old man leave her here? Was he really going to let her stay here for a while? How was she going to go back? Perhaps because Feng Jiu did not speak, the old eagle continued. In this demonic beast forest, other than the demonic beasts and spirit beasts, there are also some cultivators who come here to gain experience. However, I don't know how they come here, nor do I know how they leave. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.